Hey, everybody. Thanks for being patient. Glad to be here with all of you tonight. Should be yet another great late night conversation. So, yeah, let's do it.
Spoken of the American century. I say that the century on which we are entering can be and must be the century of the common man.
A radical redistribution of economic power.
I mean, we know that racism is just a byproduct of capitalism. Everything would be all right if everything was put back in the hands of the people.
We need a government that will make sure Americans are taken care of and organize the economy to serve the people, not the profits of a wealthy few.
We now have the techniques and the resources to get rid of poverty.
We got to start getting out there with the people.
Get out of the movement and get to the masses.
We need a government of action.
Welcome, everybody. I am glad to be here with all of you tonight. It's really, really great to be here, and we got plenty to talk about. Just a quick rundown, the way we do things. I give my opening remarks, which is whatever I'm going to talk about, current events, etc. Then from there, we do the roll call, where I call you all out as I see you. And then from there, I answer your questions for the remainder of the night. So if you got something you want me to talk about in the second half of our show, by all means, send me a super chat on YouTube or a Rumble rant on Rumble. I answer people's questions for the second half of our program. That's what we do. Just a couple announcements. First things first is the Center for Political Innovation is open for business. We are reincorporated and we are accepting memberships again. And so you can just go to the website, cpiusa.org, and you can sign up and become a member of CPI. Then you'll get invited to all the weekly Zoom calls, and you know, you'll some people just want to pay dues as a way to contribute. Other people want to become active, but we are actively recruiting at this point, so you can become a member of our organization. And on Friday, Black Friday, we're going to be on here 8 hours. This will be an 8-hour stream on Friday. An 8-hour stream with different members of the organization, in which we will be, it'll be a membership drive, basically. We're going to do fun activities, party games, all kinds of stuff. It's going to be a lot of fun on Friday, so don't miss it on Friday. Join the Center for Political Innovation and come for the all-day membership drive that we are doing on Saturday, or on Friday, Black Friday, the 29th of November. Also, start watching the morning messages. Dan Niswander, he is handling our morning messages, and every morning we do have morning messages on the CPI YouTube channel. Go and subscribe to the CPI YouTube channel to see the messages that come out every morning. Great one this morning from Dan. And we have morning messages every morning from different members of the organization. Dan is the guy who's coordinating it now. So we encourage you to go and subscribe to the Center for Political Innovation YouTube channel. If you feel so inspired and you would like to share something with our community, submit a morning message. I think that would be a great thing to do. Submit a morning message. We have this link where all you have to do is film and upload. You can upload it from your phone. Submit a morning message. A great way to support other members of the community. It's a great thing to do. So that's basically the announcements I've got. I'm going to get into the opening remarks. But as I said before, first we do opening remarks. While I give the opening remarks, I'll be keeping track of the Rumble rants and the super chats that come in. Then I'll do the roll call, and then I will answer the super chats and Rumble rants that come in, the questions that come in the second half of the show. That's the way we do things. Let's do it. So I don't know if you saw, but yesterday it was announced by the Islamic Republic of Iran that their retaliation against Israel is pending, and that they intend to hit Israel in a way that it has never been hit before. Now, it hasn't happened yet, from what we can tell. Now, Hezbollah has shot some missiles at Israel. Hezbollah is an anti-imperialist group based in Lebanon that is Shia Muslim, inspired by the Islamic Revolution. But Hezbollah has struck Iran, but we're waiting for the Islamic Republic to actually strike against Israel, right? We're waiting for Iran, the Islamic Republic, to actually take its action against Israel. What we need to remember about this, because I'm sure as soon as this happens, and it is imminent, right? And I mean, they're gonna do it. And they did it in April. You'll remember that they did, strike Israel. When it happens, the response of a lot of U.S. mainstream media will be to act like this is somehow unprovoked, just like they did with Russia's special military operation in Ukraine. They act like it comes out of nowhere, right? And especially if Israeli civilians are killed, which I certainly hope doesn't happen. I don't want any civilians anywhere to be killed. But especially if Israeli civilians are killed, which would make sense because Israel has killed loads of Iranian civilians and loads of Lebanese civilians and loads of Palestinian civilians, tens of thousands at least, since last October. If Israeli civilians are killed, which would be an awful tragedy. I do not advocate that. And I don't want any civilians to be killed. But if indeed Israeli civilians are killed, U.S. media will portray this as if it came out of nowhere, and it will be the terrorist Islamic Republic engaging in terrorism against Israel. And that is not what happened. When Iran does hit Israel, it will be a response to a number of things. Right? Now, we can go back to the founding of the Islamic Republic of Iran, how they had a dictator imposed on them by the United States, the Shah, who tortured people, etc., who was a puppet of Israel and was overthrown in a popular revolution. And we can go over all the different crimes that Israel has committed against Iran over the years, murdering peaceful nuclear scientists, right? When I was in Iran, I actually visited the site where a college professor who taught physics was walking to go teach at his class, and someone walked up to him and gunned him down, a Mossad agent who was working with the Mujahideen cult, the religious sect that works with Mossad. They murdered him in cold blood right there on the street just for teaching science classes, because they thought that the students who took those science classes, they might learn about stuff that might help Iran eventually get a nuclear bomb. And so this physics professor was murdered in Iran by Israel, assassinated. And I could go over all the things that Iran has faced at the hands of Israel. And I could do that. And I can't do that tonight because there's just too many. There's been too many assassinations, too many bombings, But let's start with October 7th, right? We all know what happened on October 7th. Hamas, Operation Al-Aqsa Flood, Hamas did that. Well, the first thing that we always hear about October 7th is they say that October 7th was done by Iran. Well, that is not true. That is absolutely not true. Hamas is not an Iran-controlled organization by any means. They're the Palestinian resistance group that is most loyal to Iran is called the Islamic Jihad in Palestine. And they are very much taking direction from Iran to some degree or other, right? They model themselves on Khomeini and all that. But Hamas is a Sunni Muslim organization. The Islamic Republic of Iran are Shia Muslims. And Hamas was originally the Palestinian wing of the Muslim Brotherhood. And that's the westernized Muslims, the Islamic movement that started in Egypt as an anti-communist Arab nationalist, an anti-communist movement in response to Abdel Nasser and the rise of Arab nationalism and socialism in the Arab world. The CIA began funding the Muslim Brotherhood in Egypt in the 1950s. They spread throughout the Middle East. Right now, the president of Turkey, Erdogan, is somebody from that tradition. The government of Tunisia is from that tradition. And Hamas originally started during the 1980s. It was the Palestinian wing of the Muslim Brotherhood. And it's been revealed that they were actually funded by Israel. Israel funded them because it wanted to fight communism among the Palestinians. Because back then, the main resistance to Israel among the Palestinians was the Popular Front for the Liberation of Palestine, a communist group, the Democratic Front for the Liberation of Palestine. The leader of the Palestinian resistance in those days was Yasser Arafat, who was a friend of Fidel Castro and was a secular kind of communist. I mean, he was religious because it's the Middle East, but he wasn't an Islamist. He didn't, preach for a state religion, etc. He was for a secular government. And regardless, Hamas emerged as the Palestinian wing of the Muslim Brotherhood. Eventually, they cut ties with the rest of the Muslim Brotherhood, and now they're Hamas. And Hamas has been very hostile to Iran. In Syria, Iran supported the Syrian government. Hamas sent soldiers to fight against the Syrian government. In Libya, Hamas was involved in trying to overthrow Gaddafi, whereas Iran was somewhat sympathetic to Gaddafi. And that all over the Middle East, Hamas tends to be aligned with the Muslim Brotherhood, and it tends to be very anti-Shia Muslim. And they are the predominant organization among Palestinians living in Gaza. They run the Gaza Strip. And they are the opposition to the kind of sellout leaders of the Palestinians who are organized under Fatah, which is the organization that is recognized, by the UN. Mahmoud Abbas, the Palestinian Authority, that's run by Fatah. That's kind of moderate and often, financially tied in with Israel, etc. And then you have Hamas, which is the more radical wing of the Palestinian resistance, but it's not run by Iran at all. Now, it is funded. It does receive some financial backing from Iran, but it also receives financial backing from Saudi Arabia. It also receives financial backing from the United Arab Emirates, from Turkey. And in fact, the main financial backers of Hamas are the ones who agree with them, Muslim Brotherhood entities like Turkey and Qatar. And the United Arab Emirates. They're the main backers of Hamas. So the idea that October 7th was because of Iran, which I've heard Zionists and pro-Israel people say over and over again. I mean, Iran does support the Palestinian resistance, but so does almost every Muslim country in that region. So that's absurd. And that Hamas politically and religiously is very opposed to the Islamic Republic of Iran and to their religion, etc., has opposed them on the battlefield many times. So that's the first thing, right? And they'll say, well, Iran is responsible for October 7th. No, that's not true. Hamas is responsible for October 7th. There's even some people that ask questions about apparently Egypt tried to warn Israel and Israel knew about it ahead of time. I don't want to get into that. That's a whole rabbit hole we could go down. But the idea that Iran is responsible for October 7th, that just didn't happen, right? So then from there, you get people saying, well, okay, Caleb, but how is Iran justified in striking Israel? Well, let's go down the line, right? Most recently, Israel bombed the embassy, the consulate of Iran in Syria. They violated the territory of another country, Syria, and they attacked and destroyed the embassy of the Islamic Republic of Iran in Syria and murdered a top Iranian general in that embassy. What else? Israel conducted airstrikes against Iran, and they murdered a Palestinian Hamas representative who was in Iran, who was the head of the negotiations with Israel. He was living in Iran, and they killed him in Iran. In addition to that, Israel has recently taken strikes against Iran's nuclear energy facilities, right? Their peaceful nuclear energy facilities, which the USA has even put in writing they have the right to have under the Iran nuclear deal. The USA was forced to admit that Iran has the right to peaceful nuclear energy under the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty, as long as every nuclear power site is monitored by the International Atomic Energy Agency. Iran has the right to practice peaceful nuclear energy as long as they are monitored, right? Because they've signed the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty, which Israel has not done, right? And Iran has signed the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty, and every site where they have nuclear power is monitored by the United Nations International Atomic Energy Agency. So Iran has the right to peaceful nuclear energy. Now, for a long time, the USA would not admit that. And then when Obama signed the Iran nuclear deal, the USA admitted in writing that Iran does have the right to peaceful nuclear energy as long as they don't try to make an atomic bomb out of it. So I mean, at this point, what is Iran supposed to do? All right, Iran signed the nuclear deal with the United States, and in exchange for the United States lifting a lot of sanctions, and in exchange for the United States putting in writing that they had the right to peaceful nuclear energy, they gave up almost all their nuclear power plants. And then after that, what happened? Donald Trump got into office and he pulled out of the deal and murdered Qasem Soleimani, the leader of the Islamic Revolutionary Guards, the elite force of the Islamic Revolutionary Military. And so the national hero of the country, right? This guy was he was like a combination of, imagine like George Washington or Abraham Lincoln or some kind of national hero combined with like some kind of rock star, right? Miley Cyrus or something like that. He was just a celebrity in Iran who was like their military hero. And he was murdered in cold blood. He went to Iraq to negotiate to end fighting in Iraq. And on his way to the airport to fly back to Iran, the USA hit his car with a drone and killed him. Very cowardly thing to do. He was invited for peace negotiations, went to Iraq, and then the USA murdered him. Very cowardly. And in response, Iran shot a bunch of missiles at a U.S. military base. And then, Israel has continued to terrorize Iran's allies throughout the region. Hassan Nasrallah, the religious leader, the founder of Hezbollah, who is like the religious leader in Lebanon, who is most associated with Iran, was ruthlessly murdered by Israeli drone strikes. In addition to that, Israel had a bunch of pagers, right? Pagers that were sent to Lebanon. And those pagers exploded on command from the Israeli government. They were set with bombs. And all kinds of people were injured and killed. A few people were killed. It was a very cowardly thing to do, a war crime. And I mean, there's many examples of Iran's allies throughout the region being ruthlessly killed, Iran's own diplomats and embassy being killed, Iran actually being attacked by Israel. And so, of course, Iran is going to retaliate. I mean, of course. And they have retaliated before. And when, Trump killed Qasem Soleimani, they attacked the military base. And when Israel, murdered and destroyed their top general in the consulate in Damascus, they responded by, shooting missiles at Israel and destroying some military bases in Israel with their missiles. Well, Israel just keeps pushing it. And so Iran is going to have to hit Israel even harder than before. And this is what raises some questions here, because there's many people who have it in their head. And the way we're supposed to think about this, Biden is aligned with the Ukrainian government, but he doesn't agree with Netanyahu. And Netanyahu is aligned with Trump, but he's not so excited about the war in Ukraine. And what we're seeing is that that's not the case. That Netanyahu is doing exactly what Biden is doing, right? After Trump got elected and won the election, Biden escalated the war in Ukraine. And now we're all waiting to see what Russia is going to do in response to, the United States and France allowing long-range strikes into Russia. Russia's preparing to retaliate. Russia may attack France. In addition to that, when it comes to Iran, right? Netanyahu is escalating and continuing to escalate with Iran. And Iran is going to retaliate. And it's like, if you just keep pushing on people, there's this expectation that you can just keep attacking people and they won't do anything about it, right? And the thing is, Iran can do things about it. Russia can do things about it. Russia has nuclear weapons. Iran does not. This is not a good situation. And this is very, very, very much provoked by the United States and provoked by Israel. And Iran is going to retaliate against Israel at some point. And Israel's kind of bracing for Iran's response. And when Iran's response comes, I am sure that if there are a lot of Israeli civilians, or even a few Israeli civilians that are killed, U.S. media will cover it, and it'll make it sound like it came out of nowhere, just like October 7th, right? October 7th, we're told, came out of nowhere, as if the Palestinians haven't been suffering at Israel's hands for a long time. I've heard various people talk about October 7th, and they said, well, why couldn't the Palestinians be peaceful? All right, this is one I've heard. Oh, well, if the Palestinians are mad about how Israel's treating them, Caleb, why can't they be peaceful? They did. They were peaceful. They had their peaceful march. And what happened? Israel opened fire on it and gunned them down. Do you remember the peaceful march that they had? They had their big peaceful demonstration, and the response of the Israeli military was to open fire on it and kill journalists and kill civilians that participated in that. The Palestinians tried to have peaceful rallies. And, in response to, that, they were met with the same response that they always get whenever they resist Israel. So, the idea that the Palestinians wouldn't strike back against Israel, that's delusional, right? And especially if you look at the region, the Palestinians have the support of the entire Muslim world, right? You go to any Muslim country, the Palestinians have support. Now, there were a couple Muslim countries, the United Arab Emirates, Dubai, or no, not Dubai. Dubai is part of the United Arab Emirates. The United Arab Emirates, it's that little country that's right next to Saudi Arabia. It's very, very small, like that kingdom that's cut off from Saudi Arabia. What is that called? Yeah, I cannot. Bahrain, United Arab Emirates, and I believe Morocco. They did recognize Israel because they thought Iran was a bigger threat, and that was the Abraham Accords. But even the population of those countries, the people in Bahrain, are Shia Muslims, and they reject the king that's imposed on them by Saudi Arabia, and they support the Palestinians. They march with Palestinian flags. They support the Palestinians. The people of the United Arab Emirates, again, that's a place, United Arab Emirates, all kinds of U.S. businesses there, and Dubai and all that, but they support the Palestinians. And even the people in Morocco, again, right? They may have recognized Israel with the Abraham Accords, but they still, and especially if you go outside of those countries, Saudi Arabia, Yemen, anywhere in the Middle East, anywhere in the Muslim world, Pakistan, Indonesia, right? Central Asia, they all support the Palestinians. So the Palestinians have that much support, right? If they have that much support and Israel is gunning them down when they have peaceful protests, why wouldn't the Palestinians retaliate, right? And to act like that came out of nowhere, it was this unprovoked, cowardly attack. No, it was very, 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 very provoked. And when Iran retaliates against Israel, that's going to be very, very, very provoked. And you can get emotional with me and say, oh my God, Caleb, and I'm sure that if there are Israeli civilians that are killed, they're going to respond. And they're going to be like, Caleb, oh my God, how can you say that? Don't you care about them? Yes, I do care about them. But I'm telling you that this wouldn't be happening if Israel hadn't pushed Iran about as far as you can push them. And that's what Israel has been doing. And especially since October 7th, Netanyahu is determined to push this into an all-out regional war with Iran because his own people are trying to overthrow him. Every day, the people of Israel are out there trying to oust Netanyahu because he's not getting their hostages home, because he's escalating a regional confrontation. And Israel could deteriorate into some kind of internal civil war very soon. And so Netanyahu is trying to expand this conflict so he can kind of keep his position based on a rally around the flag. Look, Israel's fighting Iran. We all need to be together. But the people, even the Israelis, are sick of Netanyahu in big numbers. Look at what's happening in Israel. There's just a widespread movement to oust Netanyahu by Israelis who hate the Palestinians and hate Iran, but also think Netanyahu is an insane motherfucker, right? And a lot of Israelis think that. They're like, hey, we hate the Palestinians. We think they're all terrorists. We hate Iran. But this Netanyahu guy is trying to get us all killed, and he's not bringing our hostages back. So Netanyahu is on this insane war drive. And the other thing, now there's rumors, we shall see, There are rumors that Trump has basically told Netanyahu to wrap this up before he takes office. That's interesting to me. It's very interesting to me that there may be historical parallels for that. Because you'll remember that right as Barack Obama was taking office, Israel unloaded on the Palestinians, and brutally attacked the Palestinians. And then Barack Obama wouldn't comment on it because he said, oh, there's only one president of the United States. And Bush didn't say anything because he was a lame duck. He was an outgoing president. And by the time Barack Obama took office, the onslaught had paused. And, it was a very strategic thing for Israel to do. And they were doing that as a favor to Obama. And it was interesting. And Netanyahu does seem to think Trump is more friendly to him. And Trump's presidency was by far the most pro-Israel presidency we've ever had. Maybe Harry Truman, who created Israel, was more pro-Israel than Trump, but that's about it, right? Donald Trump moved the U.S. embassy to Jerusalem. I don't know if you remember that, but he moved the U.S. embassy to Jerusalem, and then he murdered Qasem Soleimani. He killed a top Iranian general without any provocation. So Donald Trump was very, very pro-Israel because he had two advisors who were super, super pro-Israel folks, right? He had Mike Pompeo and John Bolton. And those guys are ultra Zionists. And, he also has Jared Cohen, his son-in-law. And Jared Cohen has married Trump's daughter, and his daughter is converted to Orthodox Judaism. And, Jared Cohen is a super Zionist, and he's married to Trump's daughter. There's a lot of pro-Israel folks surrounding Trump, including Tulsi Gabbard, including all kinds of people that are very, very pro-Israel. Kushner, right? It's Kushner, Jared Kushner, not Cohen. Yeah, Jared Kushner. Thank you. Got it right. Sorry about that. But that said, right, you will remember that when Trump left office, he basically tweeted out that Netanyahu had stabbed him in the back. Right? That Netanyahu had stabbed him in the back and that he was the most pro-Israel president, and how dare Netanyahu have done this. And Donald Trump did write a book called The Art of the Comeback, which is very hard to find. Everyone reads Art of the Deal by Donald Trump, but there's The Art of the Comeback. And The Art of the Comeback is the book Donald Trump wrote after the failure in Atlantic City. Trump invested a lot of money into casinos and stuff in Atlantic City, and it didn't work out, and he lost a lot of money. And so then Donald Trump, he had to regroup from there. And, eventually he started doing The Apprentice, and, Donald Trump rebuilt his career. And so he wrote this book called The Art of the Comeback, which you can find a PDF of. And one of the things it says in The Art of the Comeback is that as soon as you come back, you get payback on the people who stabbed you in the back, right? And that the comeback, it's useful when you fail because you find out who your real friends are and who has betrayed you. And then when you come back, you need to get payback immediately against the people who betrayed you. Well, it's no secret that Donald Trump thinks Netanyahu betrayed him. That's no secret to anybody. So we'll see if Donald Trump follows The Art of the Comeback. Now, there was a ghostwriter. He didn't write the book himself. There was a ghostwriter who wrote it, but it's his ideas in the book. And it's interesting that they've done everything they can to just make that book impossible to find since, when Donald Trump was running for president a second time. And that's, there was all this concern that Donald Trump would retaliate and jail his political opponents while Biden was actually doing it. You'll remember Biden was actually jailing, hundreds of January 6th people. He was jailing, he jailed the Uhuru movement, jailed Trump, tried to jail Trump himself with criminal charges. You'll remember all of this, but they were all saying, Trump might jail his political opponents while Biden was actually doing it. But you have to wonder, what's going on here. Now, Elon Musk has generally been pretty pro-Israel, but every so often he will start saying weird things about Jews, right? And that's what many people have noticed about Elon Musk. It's very interesting, and you can look into that. I'm not going to quote it. And Elon Musk seems to be one of the main front men for Trump, right now. And Elon Musk has said some interesting things about Jews. And also there is a an anti-Israel faction in the Trump camp. We know Nick Fuentes and Kanye West both went to Trump Tower, to Mar-a-Lago, and met with Trump. And there's a big layer. And if you listen to any Trumper podcast, read the comments. There's a layer of people that are anti-Israel, right? Even though what they call conservatainment, all the conservative podcasts, the Daily Wire and Jordan Peterson and, all that stuff is blatantly pro-Israel. They fired Candace Owens from the Daily Wire because she started to criticize Israel a little bit too much. You'll notice, though, there are a layer of Trumpers that are not that, right? And Vivek Ramaswamy. Now, Vivek Ramaswamy, he says that he doesn't mind Israel protecting their borders, which is not what they're doing, right? Israel has no set borders, right? Ask Israel where its borders are. They have no set borders. They're just constantly expanding into the Palestinian territory with settlements. But he says Israel can protect their borders, but it's not America's job to pay for it. He wants to cut off aid to Israel. And this is a guy, Vivek Ramaswamy is going to be running the Department of Government, the Department of Government Efficiency, the DOGE. There's a lot of questions here, right? Trump has basically positioned himself as if he's going to be more and more pro-Israel this term than even last time. And I really hope that's not the case. That said, if indeed Trump has told Netanyahu this has to stop by the time I enter office, and Netanyahu is worried about being ousted by his own people, and he wants Donald Trump to have his back, in whatever goes down in Israel, the escalating political crisis there. I don't know what's going to happen. I really don't. But I do know that Iran will retaliate against Israel. They have to at this point. How can they not retaliate? They lose any credibility if they don't retaliate. Israel is asking for retaliation at this point. Iran has to strike Israel, and they did it once in a very, very restrained way. You remember back in April when they struck Israel, they destroyed a lot of military bases. They didn't kill any soldiers. They didn't kill any civilians. All the Israelis were hiding in their bunkers and all of this. But, is it going to be such a tame response this time? I don't know. Because last time they gave a very tame response to Israel. They destroyed some military bases, and they, did a lot of property damage with their missiles. They made all the Israelis hide in their basement. And that was it. And Israel just kept going with their provocation. So, Iran may feel that they are compelled to strike in a way that inflicts more damage, and that's not good, right? That's not good. My thinking is that Iran is probably also looking, and don't kill the messenger, okay? Don't kill the messenger. I'm just telling you the facts, okay? I'm just telling you how it is. You don't want to hear this? Fine. I'm not advocating this. I'm just telling you what Iran is probably thinking. Iran is looking at the crisis in Israel right now. And what are they seeing? They're seeing all the Israelis are out there protesting because Netanyahu hasn't brought their hostages back. He's not negotiating to get the Israelis that were taken hostage back. And the political floodwaters around Netanyahu are rising as the Israelis are saying this guy doesn't really care about keeping us safe. This guy's putting us in more danger. He's more concerned about his own political career and his own military agenda. He's letting Israelis get killed. And Iran is probably looking at that and thinking, oh, okay. And look, enough of their people have been killed. They're probably thinking, if some Israelis end up getting killed in this situation, that'll make the Israelis that are already mad at Netanyahu because he doesn't seem to care about them. That's going to make them even madder. And Iran may be calculating that. I don't know. And I hope no civilians are killed, but it makes sense. It makes sense that Iran would be thinking, all right, we're going to strike back in a way that'll do the most political damage to Netanyahu so he can be ousted from office and he doesn't continue provoking us this way. And it looks like the majority of the Israeli people don't even want him doing this, and they're already mad at him. So if we retaliate in a way that makes the Israeli people really feel like, oh my God, what did Netanyahu get us into? That might be the thing that encourages them to go ahead and oust this guy from office. I'm just telling you, if I was Iran, I'd be thinking that way. I hope that they're not thinking that way because I don't want any civilians to be killed. But you know what? A lot of their civilians have been killed. A lot of their civilians, the nuclear scientists, innocent people, all the people that were in the consulate that got blown up, all the energy site. I mean, the pagers that blew. I mean, a lot of civilians have been killed, by Israel. And in the death count among the Palestinians, I mean, is at least, 20, 30,000 at this point. I've heard even higher. So the idea that Iran might be thinking, look, we need to strike back in a way that inflicts civilian casualties on Israel, that might be what they're thinking. I don't speak for them, and I don't know, and I certainly hope they're not thinking that. But I'm telling you, and I'm trying to get you to understand this, because the way U.S. media covers these things is so one-sided, and it's so biased. You're not understanding the context of anything. Right? Just like the war in Ukraine. They made it sound like it just came out of nowhere. Putin just attacked Ukraine out of nowhere. Well, no, there's all kinds of provocations. And I'm telling you, that's the same thing with this Israel-Palestine thing, right? And you have to understand it in that context. I mean, I hope that whatever Iran's response is, it doesn't lead to a further escalation. I think that's the best thing we can hope for. Iran is going to respond. There's no question that Iran is going to respond to Israel. They've announced they're going to do it. They're not going to do it immediately after they announce they're going to do it. They're going to wait. They want it to come as a surprise, but give it 2 or 3 days, give it a week, give it 2 weeks at the most. And they say it's going to be a way Israel has never been hit before. And that makes me think that, I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but it makes me think that there's going to be a death toll this time. Right. That there's going to be a body count, and am I happy about that? No, absolutely not. And I'm certainly not happy about all the Palestinians that have been killed, and all the Lebanese people that have been killed, and all of the Iranians who've been killed. I'm not happy about any of this, but I'm just telling you that if I look at this objectively, right, as somebody who understands the conflict there, someone who's been to Iran a number of times, made a whole film in Iran, wrote a book about the Houthis that was the top-selling book on Yemen, for a couple weeks, right? Back in January, I wrote, "Who are the Houthis? What are they fighting for?" And that was like the top-selling book on Yemen. I participated in a humanitarian mission to Yemen with the Iranian Red Crescent Society in 2015. I know what I'm talking about. And I'm telling you that it's looking to me like some Israelis are going to die. And I'm not happy about that, but I'm not seeing how that doesn't happen here. Right? I mean, if Iran is able to retaliate in a way that is very dramatic and doesn't kill Israelis, that would be great, because then people wouldn't be dead. You know what I'm saying? I'm not getting into fair. It's like, oh, you killed me, I get eye for an eye. I'm not getting into that. Right? I'm just telling you that as a humanitarian person, I don't want anyone to die. But I'm telling you, I don't know how Iran does this and doesn't kill some Israelis, right? I don't know how that happens. I mean, it could happen. And, the amount of restraint that Iran has shown, I must tell you, is massive, right? Imagine that a top American military leader, Mark Milley or one of these top American military leaders, went to Mexico to negotiate with China or Russia. And there was peace talks happening in Mexico. So he flew down to Mexico and he negotiated with Iran or Russia or China or some country that doesn't like the United States. And then on his way back to the airport, that country blew up his car and killed him with a drone strike. Do you think the United States would just, you think they would just shoot a couple missiles at a military base and be done with it? I don't think so. Right? I think there would be a very, very dramatic response. And when Qasem Soleimani, the national hero of the Islamic Republic of Iran, was murdered, Iran showed amazing restraint in their response. In addition to that, if somebody blew up the U.S. embassy in another country while it had a top general, the head of the Pentagon, right? Top general, head of the Pentagon, U.S. Secretary of Defense, somebody like that was in a U.S. embassy in another country, and Russia or Iran or China blew up that embassy and killed them. Do you think our response would be symbolic? No, right? There would be a body count. I mean, this is It's like organized crime. It's like, it's like gang warfare. I mean, it's not, war is ugly. They talk about rules of warfare and war crimes and all of that. And it's just like, that's one way in which, it's weird. I can understand Trump, right? I can. I'm telling you, I'm not endorsing this. I'm not endorsing this at all. But Donald Trump, he gave the famous, the interview that many people condemned him for, where he said, oh, we got to go after terrorists' families, right? And obviously that's a war crime, right? You cannot retaliate against family members. That is a war crime. But why did Trump say that? Well, Trump is a businessman, and he's been doing business in New York City for a long time. And, trust me, in New York City, especially back in the day, 70s and 80s, before they cleaned up New York with Giuliani and all of that, construction, which Donald Trump was all over, waste management, all of that, he was dealing with the mob. He was dealing with organized crime, and he knows how they operate, right? And that, if you want criminal entities to leave you alone, you have to hit them where it hurts. And, if one gang is fighting another gang, you hit them where it hurts, right? And so Trump, when he gave that interview where he said, oh, we need to start going after terrorist families, he was speaking probably from his personal experience. He's saying, look, if I was dealing with a ruthless gang in New York City that was murdering, people in my neighborhood or whatever, I would think, how would we retaliate in a way that would make that ruthless gang stop? Oh, I would go after their family. Now, that's not how a president should speak. I understand, but he wasn't president when he said it, was he? No, he was just Donald Trump when he said it, I believe. And he was just speaking from his own personal experience, speaking off the top of his head, about his own understanding of how you might deal with a ruthless gang of people who kill people, right? He was just in his life experience, playing rough, playing hardball, and in a very corrupt New York City of the 1970s and 80s, where there's a lot of organized crime and all of that. He was speaking to what he understood you do when you're dealing with people that are murderous killers. You find a way. And that's why war is so ugly. And that's the whole thing, is it's like you want to make rules of war. You want to say that there's war crimes and crimes against humanity and all of this. But it's like when a war gets going, that doesn't make it right, obviously. And torture is a horrendous thing. And murder of civilians is a horrendous thing. And I'm against all of that. But when you are in a big, ugly war, it's kind of like people are dying left and right. And, it's just an ugly situation, right? I don't know. I don't know. I could give some examples of things where it's like people don't understand the context. People don't understand the context. There was a movie I saw a few years back. It was about World War II. It was about guys who drive a tank in World War II. I think it starred Matt Damon. What was that movie called? Matt Damon tank movie. I went to see it with my wife. It was a very violent film. It wasn't Courage Under Fire. That's really old. Was it Fury? Right? Was that Matt Damon or was it Ben Affleck? Or right? No, it was Fury. Yeah, Fury. 2014. My wife and I and my wife's mother, we all went to see the movie Fury in 2014. And I watched the movie Fury, and it was basically about American soldiers going into Nazi Germany, and how the Germans were still fighting them as they went in. And there's a scene in the movie, Brad Pitt, right? It wasn't Matt Damon, it was Brad Pitt. All right, that's what I got wrong, right? And there's a scene in the movie where the American soldier, he goes into a home in Nazi Germany. He goes into the home, and he pulls his gun out and points it at like a housewife, right? The housewife is there, and he points the gun at her, and I was like, oh shit, are they going to show what really happened? And then he says to her, make me tea. And she makes him tea. And I was like, we all know what happened, right? And when the Soviet Union invaded, Nazi Germany at the end of the war, when the United States and the Allies, the United Nations invaded the Nazi Germany at the end of the war. We all know what happened, right? And I mean, it was horrendous. It was absolutely horrendous, right? That there was mass rape of German women after World War II. That is a historical fact. It wasn't right. It was wrong, obviously. It was a crime against women, a crime against civilians, but it happened, and it should not have happened, right? It was an evil thing that happened. But does that mean the Nazis were right in the war and the Allies were wrong? Of course not. It means it was a big, ugly war. Do you think the Nazis weren't raping all kinds of Soviet women when they invaded the Soviet Union? You think the Nazis weren't dragging Polish people and Soviet people to death camps and gassing them to death? And as they say, two wrongs don't make a right. And what, the Allied forces did to the German women when they liberated Nazi Germany was wrong, but it still happened. It still happened, right? And so then I was watching the movie Fury with Brad Pitt, and he pulls his gun out, make me tea. I'm like, well, American soldiers and Soviet soldiers and British soldiers and French soldiers who got into Nazi Germany, they did a lot more than ordered the German women to make them tea. That is just a historical fact. And, I'm obviously not defending that. I'm telling you the reality of the situation. And, obviously, I wish that I personally could go back in time and tell the Allies, no, you're better than the Nazis. The Nazis raped women when they invaded countries, but we are better, and we're not going to do that. I wish I could do that. I don't have the ability to go back in time and do that, right? And if you look at the circumstances of the war, if you look at the way women were treated in the world at that time, if you look at the conditions of that war, that happening, it was kind of inevitable, and it was evil and it was horrible and it should not have happened. But to create a military in those circumstances, in that time where they wouldn't retaliate against the enemy that way, that would have been very, very difficult. Now, people talk about Mao's Red Army and how, Mao's Red Army was famous for their lack of atrocities, right? This is the Little Red Book, right? This is the Little Red Book. And that, I guess I will make a little bit of an exception for the Red Army, because the Chinese People's Liberation Army, it was a little bit different. This wasn't two countries fighting each other. This was two rival governments in China. You had the KMT, Republic of China, and then you had the Mao, the communist. It was the Chinese Soviet Republic, and then it became the Eighth Route Army, and eventually they declared the People's Republic. You had two governments that were contending for power in China. And the way Mao's Red Army was able to kind of win over the population was because they didn't rape and pillage. They had, the Chinese Soviet Republic. I believe it was 1931 that they declared. So funny, no one ever talks about the Chinese Soviet Republic. Google Chinese Soviet Republic. That sounds like people hear that name and they say, that can't be geographically correct. The Soviet Union was in Russia. Yeah, but in November 7th, 1931, the Chinese Communist Party declared the Chinese Soviet Republic. They had a big enough chunk of China in the early 30s that they declared a new government. It was a bit premature, but they declared the Chinese Soviet Republic. And it was part of their civil war against the KMT government in Beijing. And they had certain territory that they controlled, and they declared the Chinese Soviet Republic, and they lost bad. Right? The Chinese Soviet Republic got crushed. The Chiang Kai-shek and his government, the KMT, they brought in a German Nazi general named Hans von Secht as their military advisor, and there were a bunch of German fighters who were fighting along with the KMT. They crushed the Chinese Soviet Republic, and it was as the Chinese Soviet Republic was crushed that you had the Long March, the famous Long March, that Mao was famous for, because they lost everything. Right? They had this whole country that they'd set up, this whole chunk of China they'd declared the Chinese Soviet Republic, and they lost, and Mao retreated into the mountains. And then Stalin tried to fire Mao from leading the Chinese Communist Party. And there was a faction, they were called like the 20 Bolsheviks, or they were like people that Stalin and the Soviet government had trained. And they basically blamed Mao for the Chinese Soviet Republic falling, and they tried to replace Mao with them, right? And it didn't work out too well. Mao was just like, no, I'm in charge of the army. I'm not leaving. But the People's Liberation Army retreated up into the mountains, and then they launched the Long March, the famous Long March, right? And the Long March is considered one of like the greatest legends of military history. 6,000 miles through the mountains. And what made the Red Army very effective during the Long March was that they would go to these villages, and a lot of these villages had not seen an army in years. They had not seen a police officer or a government official in years. These were like remote villages up in the mountains. And as soon as the Red Army showed up, they would panic, because what did armies do when they came to a village? Steal a bunch of stuff and rape all the women. That's what they did. And when the Red Army showed up, they didn't rape all the women, and they didn't steal all the property from the people. And people were like, damn, what kind of army is this? We've never even heard of this kind of army, because for thousands of years in Chinese history, rarely did these people that lived up in the mountains ever see a military, ever see a government official. Maybe once a year somebody showed up to collect taxes or something, but they barely ever saw a government person or a military person. And when they did, it was not a good thing. That person showed up to extract taxes in a very violent way, or rape all the women, or pillage, or rob them, or whatever. And so the Red Army, the Chinese Red Army, they had the 8 rules of discipline, which is, it's in the Little Red Book, and they actually have a song. All right, but let me, if I can find it, the 8 rules, the 5 points of attention and the 8 rules of discipline, or something like that. And these rules actually served very, very, very important purposes, right? They were very, very, very important. Yeah, here it is. The 3 main rules of discipline and the 8 points of attention. They're in the Little Red Book, right? And the rules are: obey orders in all your actions. Do not take a single thread of needle, or do not take a single needle or piece of thread from the masses, and turn in everything that is captured. And then the 8 points of attention are: speak politely, pay for what you buy, return everything you borrow, do not pay for anything that you damage, do not swear at people, do not damage crops, do not take liberties with women, and do not ill-treat captives. Right? And those were the rules. Those were the 3 main rules of discipline and the 8 points of attention that were officially part of the Chinese Red Army's rules. And they enforced these rules with extreme measures. If you stole something, they would give you the death penalty. And they used the death penalty very liberally in the Chinese People's Liberation Army throughout the 1930s, right? You stole from a peasant, they put you before a firing squad and killed you. And the reason they did that was because they were waging a public relations battle with the KMT government. The KMT government was notoriously corrupt, and the only way they could get the population to support them is they had to have a really clean record. So the Mao's Chinese People's Liberation Army, you couldn't steal from the peasantry. You couldn't even swear at the peasantry. You couldn't damage the crops. Everything you did, had to follow this kind of honor code, which they enforced with a very rigid, system of, the death penalty and, very extreme punishment if they didn't execute you for breaking it. And that's how they were able to win over the population. It's kind of fascinating history. The People's Liberation Army, they actually have the 3 rules of discipline and the 8 points of attention. They actually put them to music as one of the official Red Army marches. It's like one of the patriotic military songs of China. And I will put this on for you. I know we're on here to talk about Iran. This was kind of a side note. We started talking about atrocities in war, but I will put on the 3 rules of attention and the 8 notices of the 3 rules of discipline and the 8 points of attention. I will just put that song on you because it's kind of a catchy military song. Right. but it served a real propaganda value, right? There's a lot of people who read this book and they talk about this stuff and they don't know what they're talking about. They don't understand it. They have, a military fetish. They like to wear outfits and they think, oh, Mao had a gun. He led revolution. It's like Mao was probably one of the most brilliant politicians in history. Mao was a political genius on many, many levels. And if you read, there's a biography of Mao Zedong called The Morning Deluge that I have up here by Han Suyin. And if you read about Mao's life, Mao was a genius on many, many levels. He was so much more than a dude with a gun, which is what the people who romanticize him now think he was. They're like, oh, Mao was a dude who had a gun. It's like, no, Mao was a political genius in many, many ways. And a man who went through many different reinventions throughout his life. He changed the way he related to politics. He changed his policies. He changed his personality. Mao was brilliant in a lot of ways. So this is the song that they wrote of the 8 Rules of Attention. Then we'll get back to talking about Iran. Sorry about that. This is an important side note because we were talking about atrocities in war and how awful they are and armies trying not to commit atrocities and things like that. So let's put on the 8 rules, or the 3 rules and the 8 notices march. So yeah, that's the song that they made out of the rules of the People's Liberation Army. But anyway, back to Iran, right? I have been to Iran a number of times, and it's interesting. I've been paying attention to Scott Ritter. I love Scott Ritter. He's a great man, a real hero, and he has been subject to far more persecution than I have. They say nasty things about me on the internet. They've never thrown me in federal prison. But Scott Ritter was framed up. I mean, if you look at the details of how he was convicted of a crime, there was no victim. He was convicted of having a conversation on the internet in which he actually did what he was supposed to do. You look at the details, he didn't commit a crime. He was sent to prison by intelligence agencies for speaking out against the war in Iraq and exposing as a weapons inspector that Iraq did not have weapons of mass destruction. Scott Ritter just did an amazing chat with Dr. Wilmer Leon and Chairman O'Malley of the Uhuru movement and Scott Ritter. It was absolutely amazing. This like 3-way conversation they had. I shared the video. If you have a chance to watch it, watch it. Amazing. But anyway, Scott Ritter's out there saying, look, we are on the brink of nuclear war. And he's out there as a UN weapons inspector and as somebody who understands that. He's like, no, we're on the brink of nukes going off. And I think he's right. And I'm certainly afraid of that. But I'm trying to keep my cool. I mean, it's like I don't contribute very much to the conversation by just screaming and yelling hysterically. I'm trying to share with you all the knowledge that I know. I'm trying to keep a cool head. You know, and I mean, I've been to the Islamic Republic of Iran and I have seen the very good results of the revolution. Okay. And I know that that's not politically correct. I'm supposed to say, oh, it's an evil totalitarian state. Well, no, that's Saudi Arabia, right? Saudi Arabia is where the king has absolute power, where they cut people's heads off. Iran, they've got plenty of women in the parliament. They got more women going to college than they got men. They got women who are generals in the army. In Iran, you know, it's complicated. Everything that Americans think is true about Iran is actually true about Saudi Arabia. Iranians are not Arabs. They are Persians. Big difference in terms of the ethnic group. Iranians are Shia Muslims, and Shia Islam is obviously very conservative and religious, but it's also got a revolutionary history. After the death of the Prophet Muhammad, Islam became dominated by the merchants and the traders, the corrupt Umayyads, and the descendants of Muhammad, you know, Imam Ali, Imam Hussein, and others. The way they fought against the corrupt Umayyads and the merchants was by building a populist movement of the people. And Shia Islam, if you read about the martyrdom of Imam Hussein and the martyrdom of Imam Ali, you will read about poor people being mobilized to fight against the rich. Imam Ali, you know, he is quoted as saying he had never seen great wealth without great violations of rights piled up all around it. Very profound. You know, you know, and that Shia Islam in particular talks about standing with the oppressed and dying for the oppressed. And Shia Islam in particular emphasizes martyrdom, that if you are a martyr, you go to heaven automatically, and you are one of the highest people. And it's funny because, you know, people look at that and they say, oh my God, that's barbaric, right? They're encouraging people to die for the faith. Well, they ought to read something called the Bible, because Jesus Christ said the same thing. He said, whoever gains his life shall lose it, but whoever loses his life for my sake will find it. And there you read the teachings of Jesus Christ throughout the Gospels. Over and over again, he tells his followers to be prepared to die for God. That is in the Bible, right? And I know it's, oh, that's crazy, Caleb. Oh, you're saying Christianity is radical Islam. I didn't say that. I'm saying that if you read the Bible over and over and over again, Jesus tells his followers, they are going to kill you for believing in me. And if they kill you for believing in me, you're going straight to heaven. You are one of the most honored people, right? Blessed are those who persecute you, is in the Sermon on the Mount. Blessed are you when you are persecuted for righteousness' sake. And he says over and over again, if whoever finds his life shall lose it, but whoever loses his life for my sake will find it. You know, it's interesting. I'm just going to throw this out there, right? I mean, I might step on some toes here, but you know, they say Jesus believed in family values, right? I mean, and he certainly did believe in family values. He preached against divorce. He pushed, you know, sexual morality. But all throughout the Gospels, he also says, leave your family for me. And if you leave your family for me, you're loved for doing so, and you should do it, right? And if your mother or father is trying to turn you against God, turn you against the faith, leave them. And if your son or daughter is trying to turn you against God, leave them, right? He says that over and over again. And in each of the Gospels, he says multiple times, if you leave your family, whatever. So, I mean, is that family values? I mean, it's pretty rigid stuff. You know, Jesus also, he says to his followers, I come not to bring peace to this earth, but a sword, right? A man's enemies shall be those of his own household. Right? I mean, it's intense stuff. So before you judge Muslims for believing in martyrdom or believing one should die for the faith, maybe you should go read the Christian Gospels again and see what Jesus Christ said, because Christianity, if you actually read what it says, also emphasizes martyrdom. But regardless, right, the Islamic Republic was founded by Shia Muslims, but it was also founded in a particularly unique time. 1979 was the year of the Islamic Revolution of Iran. And what was happening in 1979? Well, in 1979, you just had the Sandinistas in Nicaragua, and they had just had a socialist revolution in the name of Christianity in Central America. And in Afghanistan, the year before, you had the Sour Revolution, where the People's Democratic Party had been established and taken power in Afghanistan. And all over Latin America, you had armed national liberation movements. And in Africa, you had Julius Nyerere, who was building socialism in Tanzania. And it wasn't Marxist socialism, it was Ajuma, African socialism, based on his understanding of the African people and their African culture. He was practicing a form of socialism that he called Ajuma. And you had Gaddafi in Libya, who was building Islamic socialism in Libya and was making Libya this impoverished country in the desert in Libya that had one of the poorest countries. All of a sudden, the people were rising up, and it was modernizing and wiping out illiteracy, wiping out poverty, and that post-World War II, you had a wave of national liberation struggles. And the USA was defeated in Vietnam, right? In Vietnam, in 1975, the government of South Vietnam fell. Saigon fell, and the USA was humiliated in Vietnam, and Vietnam was reunified. And U.S. imperialism was on the retreat. And the Islamic Republic, they were not communists. They were absolutely not communists. But they saw their revolution as part of a global wave of anti-colonial and national liberation movements that were happening at the time. The Islamic Republic of Iran funded Nelson Mandela and the struggle against apartheid in South Africa. The Islamic Republic of Iran also funded the IRA and the Irish freedom struggle. And there's a street to this day, I have seen it, I have been to. There is a street in Tehran called Bobby Sands Street, named after the Irish freedom fighter and martyr, Bobby Sands. And that there are many, many, many examples of how, the Islamic Republic of Iran, they have, murals of Malcolm X, and that they very much identify their movement and their country with the wave of anti-colonial revolutions that was happening around the world at the time. And one of the slogans of the Islamic Revolution of Iran was not capitalism, but Islam. And that was a slogan that they utilized. They said, we are fighting for not capitalism, but Islam. And they also said, we are waging a war of the poor against the rich, war of poverty against wealth. And they also said neither East nor West. They were not aligned with the Soviet Union, and they were not aligned with the United States. Neither East nor West, war of poverty against wealth, not capitalism, but Islam. This was an anti-colonial and anti-imperialist revolution that the Islamic Republic of Iran had. But Iran also had a very big middle class, and that the Islamic Republic has kind of a dual nature, right? And during the 1990s, Iran, their main enemy was Iraq, right? Iraq invaded Iran, and Iraq was a Ba'athist Arab socialist government. Arabs and Persians don't get along historically, and Iraq was a secular Arab nationalist and socialist government led by Saddam Hussein, and they invaded them. And Iraq was armed by the Soviet Union. And so Iran very much, pivoted, especially in the late 80s and then in the 90s, in a very pro-free market direction. But the state still controlled the oil. The state still provided a huge amount of natural resources. And then it was after the death or after the 9/11 attacks, when the USA began targeting Iran, calling them the axis of evil, that Iran pivoted in a much more anti-imperialist and socialist direction with the rise of Ahmadinejad. And that Iran aligned itself with Bolivarian socialism in Latin America, and that Ahmadinejad, he gave fiery speeches condemning capitalism. He said Fidel Castro, I think Ahmadinejad, the Iranian president, he said that Fidel Castro was one of the greatest Muslims who's ever lived, even though Fidel Castro was not a Muslim. But I have been to Iran, and I actually made a film about my trip to Iran. And I'm going to show some of that film on here. I'm not going to show the whole thing. And it's on the YouTube channel. If you go to my website, calebmaupin.net, you can just click the link. You can watch the whole film. I made this film in 2015. I made this documentary film called Iranian Dream. And if you watch Iranian Dream, you will see Iran through my eyes as an American who went there after the Supreme Leader wrote his letter to the youth of America. And you will see Iran through my eyes. But I just want to show you the part of the film where I participated in like a Shia Muslim prayer service, right? So I'm going to show you that part of the film. So enjoy.
Iran's largest religious festival coincided with the days of my presence in Iran. I just wanted to use this opportunity to have a little talk with people about the Supreme Leader of Iran and his letter. But everything does not always happen the way we expect. That night happened to me, and it was not what I expected at all.
It's very difficult for me to really describe it. I don't think you can really understand what went on in that room until you're there. You have to be there to understand it. I was not expecting what I saw in that room, and I don't think I could ever really explain it to anyone. We're here in a very, very sacred place. This is Imam Zodi Ali Akbar, and there are celebrations going on. They haven't actually started yet. Celebrations for Imam Mahdi. He's the 12th Imam in Shia Islam, and he has left, but it is believed that he will return at the end of time along with Jesus Christ. That was a real privilege. I think there are probably millions of Iranians who would love to have sat in that couch with me and been able to speak to him, because he's such a widely loved figure. But I was able to do that not as an Iranian, not even as a Muslim, but as someone from the U.S. And that was a real privilege to be able to talk to him.
Well, the reason that I have come to Iran is because of the letter written by the Supreme Leader. The letter was directed at youth like me. I'm from the United States. And I was wondering if you had read the letter and what it meant to you.
در زمان صدر اسلام دعوت به اسلام از جانب پیغمبر یک کلمه بود: قولوا لا اله الا الله تفلحوا. بگین خدا یکیه، جز خدا خدایی نیست، رستگار بشین. و سوال میشد چرا باید بگیم خدا یکیه، غیر از اون خدا خدایی نیست؟ قرآن رو میذاشتن جلوش. حرکت رهبر معظم انقلاب خیلی ساده و خیلی هوشمندانه است. اگر حرف از رو صداقت باشه اصلا توضیح نداره. اگر حرف دروغ باشه هی باید یه دروغ دیگه بگیم بذاریم اونو جبرانش کنیم. این مقدمه رو عرض کردم که بگم من در مورد نامه رهبر معظم انقلاب هیچ چیزی نمیگم. فقط میگم حرفشونو گوش کنیم، برین یک بار قرآن همینطوری بخونیم. جوانای اروپا و امریکای شمالی بالاخره آدمایی هستن که تحصیل کردن. کاری نداره به عنوان وقت گذرونی بخونه، ضرر نمیکنه. فکر کنی یه فیلم داری نگاه میکنی. از معجزه قرآن اینه که حتما جذب خواهید شد. من خواهش میکنم یه بار برام بخونم. ضرر نمیکنه. خیلی خوش آمدید.
Very insightful words, and I thank you.
You're welcome.
Cardi May, he's known as kind of a very skilled singer. He does this kind of spiritual singing that they do here in Iran. It was a brief interaction I had with him, but it was a very, very good interaction. And I felt very welcomed. As somebody from the United States, as someone who's not a Muslim, to be taken into this holy place, this shrine, to be taken there and taken all the way upstairs into the back room, where only the performers are, to be sat on a couch, given tea and chocolate candies, sitting there and to speak with this man who was such a prominent figure, such a well-known spiritual musician, to be able to just sit there and just have a chat with him. He then invited me, even though I'm a Christian and not a Muslim, to join the ceremony.
بله.
I just asking that if you can take part in the celebration that we have, and of course.
مراسم امام زمانه.
The celebration is just for the sake of Imam.
امام زمان منجی بشره. نجات دهنده مسلمان فقط نیست.
He's not just for Muslim.
تشریف بیارین خوشحال میشین.
It was just something special, something that you can't find anywhere else in the world. And if I try to explain it, if I try to, scientifically analyze it, that might take away from its power in a way. I would just urge people, I guess, they'd have to experience it for themselves to really understand it. This room was full of passion, and so much love and so much spirituality in that room, so much emotion. It was like nothing I've ever seen before anywhere. Even though I had a translator, and so I couldn't hear word for word what he was saying, I could emotionally understand what he was saying. They weren't looking at each other. They weren't looking at each other. It was like it was a spiritual experience. Being in that room was a spiritual experience. I know after I heard one song, my guide said to me, he said, "Do you want to go?" I said, No, I want to stay. I want to see this. I mean, it was like nothing I'd ever felt. There was an energy in that room of all these men, here in Iran, full of energy, having a relationship with God through music. It's a kind of spiritual, religious music that is about so much more than just the sound.
have that much love, that much emotion, I could definitely see myself doing that. And there are other times in my life where I felt this way, full of passion, and it's very deep.
When I get back, I'm going to read the Quran, all of it, every page. I need to learn about Islam. I need to understand Islam. I also want to read the Hadith so that I understand about the Imams and their history. Here we are in a very sacred place where so many people who gave their lives in support of the Islamic Revolution are buried. These men are shaheed, or martyrs, people who gave their lives in support of the Islamic Revolution. You can look at all of these faces here, and most of these men are people who signed up. They were people who signed up in the military to defend Iran's revolution during the Iraq-Iran War, fought and died to protect the revolution that Imam Khomeini led. But then you come over to these two. These two men, these weren't soldiers. These weren't people who were engaged in any kind of armed fighting. These two men were simply doing what many people do all over the world and doing scientific research. These were scientific researchers. These were people involved in science related to Iran's peaceful nuclear energy program. They were trying to help develop Iran's peaceful nuclear energy program, doing scientific research and investigation, and for that they were killed by the Israeli government in collaboration with terrorists. They killed these two men for doing nothing but trying to develop peaceful nuclear energy, build up their country, engaging in peaceful scientific research. These men were killed, murdered in their own country, simply for trying to engage in scientific research.
But anyway, you can watch the rest of the film. It's all on YouTube if you want to see it. I will be, we'll get to the second half of the show here in a minute. I don't have that much more to say here in my opening remarks. If you got any super chats or Rumble rants, that's what the second half of the show is me answering those. So if you got them, now is the time to come forth with them. But that said, couple things. First of all, when I was in that room, with the guys that were, clapping, and yeah, it's only men in there. This is Islam. This is the Muslim world. Things are gender segregated. Schools are gender segregated. And, when I was in that room, I noticed there were a few, not many guys who looked just like me, had red hair. And so I asked my guides, I'll never forget this. It's kind of a funny experience. I asked them, who are those red-haired guys in the room? And my guide said, oh, those are Caucasians. And I thought, yeah, they're white dudes like me. And he's like, no, they're from the Caucasus Mountains. They're Caucasians. And I was like, oh, they're from the Caucasus, right? But apparently red-haired people, the red-haired gene or whatever, comes from the Caucasus Mountains. That's where redheads started. Redheads started in the Caucasus Mountains, and those red-haired guys that I saw, they were literally Caucasian. So I thought that was pretty funny. The other thing that I want to say before I end this segment and we start answering, we do the roll call and then answer super chat questions. I want to say this, which is, this is a long shot, and I don't even know how to. I don't even know. Maybe I'm just, maybe this is not even worth saying, but I will say it. Donald Trump wants to make peace. He says that he wants to make peace. He wants to be remembered as a peace president. And he did an interview with a very anti-Islamic Republic Iranian American on the podcast. And the guy said, well, we're going to overthrow the Islamic Republic. And Trump said, no, we can't even handle our own problems here. I don't want to do that. And Trump, he seems to be surrounded by pro-Israel people and all of that, but he doesn't have a desire to go to war with Iran. And I think on some level, right? If you just asked Trump point blank, you didn't get into the details. You said, hey, Trump, would you like Iran and America to get along better? He would probably say yes. Now, his understanding of Iran and Israel and the Middle East is way wrong and way different than mine. But on a basic level, Trump wants to get along with Iran, I believe. And so if there's any chance of this message trickling out there into the universe, I'm just going to say it. Trump must apologize to Iran for killing Qasem Soleimani. And, you know, I don't even know if that apology will even be heard. It may fall on deaf ears. But if there's going to be any hope for improving U.S. relations with Iran, Trump must apologize for murdering Qasem Soleimani. I know the chances of that happening are very, very small. But Trump must do that because that was such a vicious deed. And Trump has the perfect way of explaining it, which is that the guy who talked him into doing it, the guy who told him it should be done, was Mike Pompeo, the CIA director. At that point, Mike Pompeo was Secretary of State, and Mike Pompeo was a lying sack of shit. And Mike Pompeo, let me add, Mike Pompeo stabbed Trump in the back and supported the FBI raiding Mar-a-Lago and said that Trump should be jailed for the way he held classified documents. And so the guy who convinced Trump to do that awful, cowardly thing he did and tricked Trump into doing it and gave Trump bad information, the guy who did it, that guy turned out to be Trump's enemy. So Trump can come forward and say, look, I didn't understand the implications. I had a liar, a backstabber, a traitor, a Judas Iscariot, a Brutus who was working with me. And he told me this would be the best thing to do. And so I did. I didn't know what I was doing. I don't study Iranian politics. I didn't know what happened. They told me this guy was a terrorist or whatever. And that response, I mean, it's not going to make things perfect with Iran, but if there's going to be any hope for U.S.-Iranian relations improving, that needs to come out of the White House. Maybe it doesn't even come in an official statement. Maybe it just comes in words, or maybe it doesn't. Maybe it comes in a statement, doesn't come in actually the words of Trump. And, you know, they say Trump doesn't apologize and stuff like that. So I don't know if there's any hope. I feel like the chances of Trump doing that, just because of the way the world is and the way the Trump administration is, and I think Trump is definitely. I'm really glad he won the election, but I don't think he's going to apologize for murdering Qasem Soleimani. But if he did, that would be such a tremendous victory for world peace. It really would be. It would be like, dang. You know what I mean? Everyone would do an about face. They'd be like, did he just do that? Right? And it would really, really move us closer to having a better relationship with Iran. But as long as Trump is the president, and until he apologizes for doing that, things between the USA and Iran are not good. And I also say that the FBI, which is very Zionist, they're trying to manipulate Trump by trying to convince him that Iran is trying to kill him. Now, there are many Iranians who would like to kill Trump because of Qasem Soleimani. There's a blood feud there. There's no question about that. But I don't think Iran is trying to kill Trump. They got, they're dealing with Israel right now, right? They're in this confrontation with Israel. They're about to retaliate. I think the last thing they want to do is enrage Trump and all of his supporters to attack them, right? I think Iran is they're not stupid. They're not going to shoot themselves in the foot. There may be a lot of anger and hatred for Trump, but I don't think they're trying to kill Trump. But we do know who did try to kill Trump. Ukraine. Right? And so the FBI, they're playing overtime, doing a tap dance. Iran's trying to kill you, Trump. Iran. No. they're saying that according to according to the FBI, they say Iran's trying to kill Trump. But everybody knows that Ukraine tried to kill Trump. Everybody knows that. Everyone saw it. Everyone, I mean, it's right in your face. Ryan Roth is a Ukrainiac nut job who wrote a nutty manifesto and published it on Amazon all about Ukraine, all about how much he hates Trump. And he came to the United States from Ukraine. Ukraine tried to kill Trump. That's a fact. Ukraine tried to kill Donald Trump. So Donald Trump don't fall for it, right? If the FBI says, well, Mr. President, Iran's trying to kill you. Yeah, Iran is pissed at you, Donald. They're pissed at you. I mean, there's no denying that. But keep in mind who actually came close to killing you, who shot up your golf course. Ukraine. And that guy who shot Donald Trump's ear, did he look Iranian to you? He didn't look Iranian to me. That guy who shot Donald Trump and grazed his ear, that guy did not look Iranian to me, did not look Arab or Middle Eastern. He did not have a record of being a Muslim. And that guy who shot Donald Trump in the ear was not tied to Iran in any way. And Ryan Roth was definitely tied to Ukraine. And it looks like he was tied to American intelligence also. Looks like he had some pretty close ties with the U.S. State Department and with American intelligence. So, again, I don't know. I'm just talking out my ass on social media. But Donald Trump, don't fall for it. When the FBI tells you, oh, Iran is trying to kill you, think twice, right? Think, okay, well, I did kill their most respected top military leader. They probably hate my guts. But Ukraine actually shot at me. Think about that, right? That's probably my greatest fear with the Trump presidency. I'm optimistic about relations with Russia. I think things with China will even go better under Trump, even though he's talking a lot of bluster against China in terms of a trade war and stuff. I actually think that Donald Trump's supporters, a lot of them want to make money from the BRICS countries. They want some of the money, not just in China, but in India and in Brazil and all of that. And they're going to be less into the sanctions. Trump's already talking about the US dollar, but I am very worried about Iran and Trump. I really am. Right. And I mean, I hope the rumors are true that Trump told Netanyahu to wrap this up before he takes office. I hope that the rumors are true, that Elon Musk has already been negotiating with Iran, and that Elon Musk has already been negotiating with Russia, and that some kind of deal, is already in the works, and that the head of NATO was sitting down with Trump at Mar-a-Lago to work out the war end. I really hope that's all true. It can't be confirmed. But when it really gets down to it, let's just be real for a minute, right? And I do appreciate the 2 super chats. Keep the super chats rolling in. Give me something to talk about in the second half of the show. I do see that we do have a Rumble rant, but any more questions, now's the time to send them, because we're going to be in the second half of the show pretty soon. I will say this, right, is that we're not pretending that the next 4 years is going to be a cakewalk. It's not. We're not pretending that Donald Trump is going to get in there and do everything we want. There's absolutely no guarantee that he'll even do what he said he was going to do. And a lot of what he said he was going to do is not stuff we agree with. But we're better off with Trump in office, because Trump is at odds with the U.S. regime change apparatus, and he's trying to build a mass movement. He's trying to build a mass movement to have his back. And in order to do that, he's going to have to hand out the goods. And he's going to have to deliver. And the fact that Trump has been bragging about the good things he did throughout his presidency, right? I watched Trump brag about meeting with Kim Jong-un, even after the Wall Street Journal attacked him for bragging about it, said he shouldn't brag about that. It didn't go anywhere. No, Trump still bragged about meeting with Kim Jong-un. And I'm just telling you that Trump is at odds with the most powerful wing of American imperialism and the most powerful wing of the American state. There's plenty American imperialists who like him. There's plenty within the American state who do like him, but there's a division That's why he has nominated Tulsi Gabbard, Director of National Intelligence. That's why Matt Gaetz, he wanted him to be Attorney General. Now Matt Gaetz is going to be Special Counsel, investigating the FBI. I mean, there's a reason that we're better off with Trump, is that Trump, to some degree or other, is pushing back against the low-wage police state and pushing back against the march toward World War III, and there will be more political space under the Trump administration. There will be far more political space under the Trump administration. That we know. And actually, I think we're going to do a lot of work under the Trump administration, because under the Kamala Harris administration, you know, I mean, I don't know, we would have basically, you know, I mean, if Kamala Harris had taken office, you know, I guess, you know, I should have, I would have had to probably, you know, learn how to start writing my memoirs and autobiography from inside of a federal prison, and it would have been illegal to say anti-war things on the internet. So this YouTube channel and any YouTube channel like it would have been shut down, and we would have just been locking down. Under Trump, there's somebody who's kind of pushing back, and there's political space, and it gives us the opportunity to fight. That's basically what Trump is doing. With Trump, there's enough space that we can actually go out there and fight, right? That we're not all in jail. We're not all having to go underground and hide, right? Under Trump, there's enough space that we can actually go out there and push anti-imperialist politics in the way that it needs to be pushed. That's what Trump's presidency gives us the opportunity to do. And I'm ready to do it. I will take the opportunity. I am ready to go out and fight. Fight, fight, fight. Fight, fight, fight. So there you go. Names and locations. Names and locations. Who is with us tonight? Names and locations. Who is with us? Names and locations. Who's with us? Who's with us tonight? I'll call you out as I see you. Gabby says, yes, yes, yes. Very good. Names and locations. Who is with us? Chicago. Gabby is in Chicago. Welcome. Dan in Los Angeles. Penny in Minnesota. Patrick in Los Angeles. Bob Troy in New York. Jacob in Wisconsin. Saviero in Mexico. Alexander in Norway. Gala in Texas. Pyongyang, North Korea. Barbecue beef. Absolutely. Rice from Adelaide, Australia. Seasoned noob in China. Laura in San Antonio, Texas. Names and locations. Names and locations. I will call you out as I see you. Names and locations. Alex in Brazil. Ellie in Sacramento. David Rennie. Steve in Boston. Jamie in Boise, Idaho. Chris in Salt Lake City. Anthony in Detroit. Sultan in Oak Park. Jack Dawkins in Arizona. Patrick in Maine. Cecily in Joliet, Illinois. Dan in the LA area. LA CPI group forming. Dare to struggle, dare to win. Very excited for that first meetup, and great job with the morning messages. Levi in El Salvador. Viva Axis of Resistance from Tijuana, Mexico. Very, very good. The Mutual Aid Delta. I don't know what that is, but it sounds good to me. David in San Jose, California. Colin in Greensboro, Quebec City. Clyde Frog. Mariah in North Carolina. Love to all. We love you, Mariah, as well. You are a beloved member of our community. So glad. Phil in the house. Yes, I got a call from Phil earlier today. We're all rooting for you, Phil, and you're a beloved member of our community as well. Very, very good. Very, very good. Underground Seattle. The English Patient. Lone Wolf, Norm Findian. Deborah in Mexico is on Facebook. How am I seeing Facebook things? They don't usually let me see Facebook things. That's cool. Hey, Deborah. I'm glad I saw your Facebook thing. They don't usually let me see Facebook stuff. So there we go. All right. Raiden Renner in Los Angeles. Welcome, Raider Renner. Raider Renner. Anyone else? Names and locations. Names and locations. Names and locations. Names and locations. Who is with us tonight? Names and locations. Names and locations. Anybody else? Moonlight Beach, California. Scott. Very good. Very, very good. Now, just a couple things before we start answering people's super chats and keep them rolling in. All right. We got 2 super chats. We got 1 Rumble rant. 1 Rumble rant, 2 super chats. Sami is in Denmark. This is it's time to rejoin the Center for Political Innovation, right? For a while, we weren't collecting dues and all that. We need you to rejoin. Go to the website, join the Center for Political Innovation. $15 a month. It's not much. And you get to be a member of our group and you get invited to all the Saturday Zoom calls. It's really awesome. We're going to have a membership drive on Black Friday. Our goal is to have 200 members by the end of that day. And I think we can very easily do it. So go and join. We need people to sign up. Time to sign up, right? You were a member before. You can do it again. Time to sign up. I am urging people to get our letter to Donald Trump out there, right? And it is doing amazingly well on Twitter right now. How many views does it have on Twitter at this point? It's got a lot. It was at 60,000 earlier today, but it's probably more than that now. But please, if you have not retweeted it, if you have not sent the Twitter video to anybody, now is the time to do it. Now is the time to do it. Now is the time to send the video. You can also send the text of the letter with the YouTube video embedded on it. You can send that out. You can send that out as well. There you go. Boom. Please share the text. We have it on the website with the YouTube video embedded on it. My boss likes it. There you go. There you go. So while I am waiting for you all to send more super chats and give me something to talk about in the second half of the show, we're going to put it on one more time, just because it's like the most amazing thing we've done in a long time. I really do think. Lately, Penny, right before the election, confronted Ilhan Omar. That was badass. That was really, really badass. In fact, we can watch that too. We'll watch that first, right? So CPI's done some cool things lately. One of them was Penny confronting Congresswoman Ilhan Omar.
I would like to know, as American people, why you continue to support sending billions of taxpayer dollars to Nazis in Ukraine to start a nuclear war with Russia. China is not our enemy.
I need you to leave, please, ma'am.
China's not our enemy. Russia's not our enemy. No more money for rich men's wars.
Take your stuff.
No more money for rich men's wars.
You are a badass, Penny, and we appreciate you doing that. That was pretty cool. And then the other really cool thing we've done lately is we wrote this letter to Trump. So I'm going to put the letter on and give you all a chance to think about what questions you want me to answer in the second half of the show. We're going to put the letter on one more time because it's really important. And then I'll start answering people's questions. So keep the super chats rolling in. Think of questions for me to answer. That's what I'm here to do in the second half of the show, is answer your questions. So here we go. All righty, here we go.
Official, CNN projects that Donald Trump has been elected president.
Donald Trump has won the state of Wisconsin, which means he is the winner of this race and will return to the White House.
A sweeping and stunning victory, unlike any in our history.
Donald Trump has won the presidency for a second time.
Donald Trump, a convicted felon who survived 2 assassination attempts, making a remarkable comeback to become the next president of the United States.
He's so evil! Nazi! Break out the vote!
It was a terrible night.
Look what happened. Is this crazy?
Dear President Donald Trump, we've all spent the last year being told Donald Trump can never win again.
But as we went and spoke with regular voters,
that's never been what they seem to think.
As we predicted, you won.
Because the system that dominates the world, the system these people live in, is in complete crisis.
Imperialism, the old order of the world ruled by big banks and monopolies, is becoming more unstable by the day.
It is relentlessly driving working families' living standards down
and pushing us towards new wars.
Americans voted for you because you promised peace.
You promised peace.
You promised peace.
They said, he will start a war. I'm not going to start a war. I'm going to stop wars.
Americans voted for you because you promised swift government action to improve their lives.
Together we can truly make America great again for all Americans. African American, Hispanic American, Asian American, Arab American, Muslim American. Success is going to bring us together.
Americans voted for you because you promised to protect our freedoms.
We want to have security. We want to have things be good, safe. I will not rest until we have delivered the strong, safe, and prosperous America that our children deserve and that you deserve.
Americans voted for you because you promised to stand up to the rich and powerful.
You promised to stand up to the rich and powerful.
To the rich and the greedy.
You promised to stand up to the rich and powerful.
And put the people's needs first.
And put our needs first.
I want you to imagine how much better our future can be if we declare independence from the elites who led us from one financial and foreign policy disaster to another.
While many exclusively focus on the negative realities of a political campaign, we remember your Quantum Leap speech, where you rolled out some extraordinary ideas for completely rebuilding this country.
Past generations of Americans pursued big dreams and daring projects that once seemed absolutely impossible. They transformed American life with the interstate highway system, magnificent it was, and they launched a vast network of satellites into orbit all around the Earth. But today, our country has lost its boldness. Under my leadership, we will get it back in a very big way. Our objective will be a quantum leap in the American standard of living.
We're writing this letter to let you know who we are.
We are the Center for Political Innovation.
The Center for Political Innovation.
The Center for Political Innovation.
We are the Center for Political
The Center for Political
We
Innovation.
are the Center for Political
The
Innovation.
Center for Political
The
Innovation.
Center for Political Innovation.
We are the Center for Political Innovation.
We're innovationist
And anti-imperialist.
We are patriotic Americans.
You want to see the power of Wall Street and London defeated.
And a whole new America rebuilt on new foundations.
We exposed Kamala Harris and how dangerous she was back in 2020 with a book called Kamala Harris and the Future of America.
The book was on sale for 4 years without incident.
Then the very day she became the nominee, on July 22nd, Amazon banned our book without explanation.
They did not want people to hear the truth about her awful record. They did not want people to see how she was tied to the regime change apparatus and how she had been carefully groomed by the malevolent forces that ran the Hillary Clinton State Department.
Amazon banned our book for 7 days. Banning our book backfired. Many thousands of copies sold from July to November as people hungered for the truth about the woman we called the most dangerous presidential candidate in history.
We are proud to have spread truth about Kamala Harris and who she really is.
In the final month before the election, we were on the streets of New York City with a huge banner that said, "Only peace can make America great again."
We highlighted what we consider to be your greatest moment in your first term as president when you offered a hand of friendship to North Korea.
Our organization gives voice to what the overwhelming majority of Americans want.
Jobs, schools, economic development, and, most of all, an end to all the wars.
While many of your biggest supporters are tied to Israel, as a matter of basic human morality, you must stop the slaughter in Gaza.
As the president, you will have the power to cut off the money. The $18 million of our tax money that goes into Israel every day is $18 million too much.
You have the power to stand up to Netanyahu and the Israel lobby.
And the overwhelming majority of your supporters will back you in doing so.
You can end the war in Ukraine as well, as you have promised to do.
Russia is ready to sit down with you and make a deal.
You can lift the sanctions that are devaluing the U.S. dollar.
You can cut off the billions of dollars in tax money that has been dumped into death and destruction.
There's an explosion of economic growth happening in Eurasia right now.
China's Belt and Road Initiative, Russia's Eurasian Economic Union, the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, and BRICS
are all full of new wealth being generated as people rise out of poverty with electrification, railway, and new living conditions.
America can get in on the action, and you can create a legacy of growth and prosperity by pushing to make it happen.
That money and technological progress doesn't need to be for everyone but us.
A share can come to our communities across the heartland and south that have been devastated by the globalist monopolies.
America can join the new world of growth and optimism and leave behind the dying world of globalist bankers.
A big step toward making that happen would be fulfilling the vision first put forward by one of Abraham Lincoln's advisors.
Build the Peace Bridge, connecting Alaska to the Russian Far East. Building that bridge over the Bering Strait would create millions of jobs and connect the United States to the wave of economic expansion happening in that region.
You also have the power to step in and protect Americans from the deep state.
You can make Facebook, YouTube, and other social media outlets stop censoring Americans who speak up.
You can free Ross Ulbricht. You can free Leonard Peltier.
We have paid particular attention to the Uhuru Three, Penny Hess, Jesse Neville, and Omali Yeshitela.
Tucker Carlson highlighted their case in his program.
As part of the liberal Russia hysteria, they got charged with being foreign agents for their work building economic development among black people in Florida and Missouri.
You can pardon them for the absurd conspiracy conviction they received after being acquitted of the primary charge of being Russian agents.
You can repeal the absurd Foreign Agents Registration Act, a vaguely worded law
used to prosecute those who want to change U.S. foreign policy or do business overseas.
We know you can't do this alone. If you do, as you have promised, and clash with the deep state and the big monopolies,
you'll soon realize that there is one ally you desperately need: the American people.
The bulk of the population, those who voted for you because they just can't take it anymore, need to be pushed into action.
The American people are like a sleeping lion that can awaken and roar louder than ever when the time is right.
The country needs a mass movement. It's happened before, and it will happen again.
We defeated the British Empire. We smashed the slaveocracy of plantation owners. We built the labor unions and won women the right to vote. We ended the Vietnam War, and we destroyed legal segregation.
The changes that the overwhelming majority of the American people want will not come about as a result of some savior in the White House.
No matter how adept of a political leader you might be.
The masses of people in their millions are the makers of history.
And it will take an upsurge of democratic participation to bring about what this country really needs.
A government of action.
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 To fight for working families.
You are in a very important position as arguably the most powerful person in the world right now.
President of the United States.
We urge you to stop the emerging low-wage police state. We urge you to stop the march towards World War III.
We urge you to help energize and mobilize a population to assert their will over the greed of the rich and powerful.
We're building a movement of anti-imperialists here in America.
People who love their neighborhoods, cities, and communities and see that protecting them is more urgent now than ever.
We consistently look to the future optimistically and see many promising possibilities in your re-election.
However, as with all politicians, especially presidents, we cannot and will not offer blind support.
Our goals are peace and prosperity for all, and we won't hesitate to criticize you if you stand in the way.
Millions and millions of working families are counting on you, Donald.
Not just here in the U.S., but around the world.
Find the strength within yourself and your relationship with God to be the hero the world desperately needs.
It may not be your first instinct, and it may even fly in the face of much of what you've said, believed, and even promised.
But it is a surefire way to find your name imprinted in the history books for centuries.
We train our members to understand the world and how it works. More importantly, how to change things.
You will hear a lot from us in the next 4 years.
And if and when you stand up to the forces of darkness and empire, we will always have your back. See you at the inauguration. All right, so what I need from you is I need you to take this letter. Here's the Twitter version. Take this letter and send it to all of your coworkers and all of your classmates and all of your neighbors and all your family members. And you don't even have to tell them you agree with it. Just use it as a conversation starter. Say, hey, I saw this on Twitter. This is interesting. What do you think of this? And especially your Trump supporting relatives. Show it to them and say, hey, this is an interesting group of Trump supporters I just heard about. What do you think of their video? Right? You can send there's the text is on our website along with the YouTube video. But I need people to get this video as widely circulated as possible. Now, my goal, and I mean, I don't know if this is possible. It all depends on how many people join CPI and how much money we're able to raise. My goal is that before the inauguration of Donald Trump on January 20th, the week before, we print this letter as a full-page advertisement in the Washington Times. Now, the Washington Times is the Republican-owned newspaper, the Republican-aligned newspaper of Washington, D.C. And it goes to every member of Congress who is a Republican. It goes to their office. It goes to every Republican, foundation, the Heritage Foundation, every Republican NGO, every Republican nonprofit, every Republican member of Congress, every Republican, everybody. You can bet Trump's office reads the Washington Times. And the Washington Times is owned by the Unification Church. And the Unification Church are the people who were largely responsible for Donald Trump visiting North Korea, right? It was Mother Moon and her work, laying the foundations of that with what she called, with a nonprofit called Think Tank 2020, that arranged for Donald Trump to visit North Korea. And I am seeing if we can raise the money to have a full page ad with the text of that letter in the Washington Times. And I think we can do it. I think our community can pull this off. We are already having an event the evening of the inauguration. We are going to be at the inauguration with our big banner, Only Peace Can Make America Great Again, and another banner, hopefully. But I think that if we do what we need to do, I think that we can get a full page ad in the Washington Times. It's not that expensive, right? Washington Post has got a much wider readership, much more expensive. Washington Times is a little more, it's a little more conservative. It's got a much lower circulation than the Washington Post, and it's aimed mainly at Republicans. And I think it'd be far more strategic for us to get an ad in the Washington Times with the full text of that letter, talking about the Uhuru case, talking about Ukraine and Gaza and everything. I think that would be a great thing for our organization to do. And I mean, we got all of December, we got January. I think we can figure it out. I think we can make that happen. Not guaranteeing it, but I think we can pull it off. But anyway, so send that letter to everybody. Send it to your friends. Send it to your classmates. Send it to your coworkers. Send it to your neighbors. Send it to the people in your neighborhood and your community, the people that you play cards with on Saturday night. People don't do that anymore, but the people back in the day, that was a thing people did. But I don't know, wherever you see people, send them this letter. And you don't have to own it. You can say, hey, I just heard about this. Or one of my friends on Facebook who lives in another state was promoting this. What do you think of it? And just get this into as many people's eyes as possible. You can do it, right? And you can do it in sneaky ways. You can do it accidentally. You can send it to somebody and be like, oops, accidental text. Sorry, that was just a weird thing I saw online. Was sending it to someone else. Oopsie daisy. You can do it that way. There's all kinds of ways, but I am counting on you to get that letter to as many people as possible. I need you to do that. I need you to do that. That letter needs to be seen by as many people as possible. You can do it. You can find a way. You can sneak it to them. You can email it to them. You can text them. You can do whatever you want. You can leave it on the computer screen and walk away. I don't know what. You can find a way to get this letter seen, that video seen by as many people as possible. I know you can. You're creative. You're smart. And if you do that, you'll be doing something really, really important, because that letter needs to be seen. You just saw it. You just saw the letter. You know why it needs to be seen by so many people. I don't have to explain it. You know how urgent that message is. You saw the image of the children of Donbass there at the end, of the Alley of Angels. You saw our talk about Gaza. You saw us talking about the Uhuru 3. You saw us talking about Roosevelt and the history of mass movements in this country. People need to hear the contents of that letter. It is urgent. It is absolutely urgent that people see the letter. And you can do it. I believe in you. I believe in you. You guys can do it, right? You don't have to pay any money. It's totally free, right? It doesn't cost anything. Doesn't cost anything. It's totally free to send it to as many people as possible. I think you can do it. I think you can do it. And there has already, I checked 67,000 views of it on Twitter already. And I am convinced this letter is just going to keep blowing up. So thank you, everybody. And now I will answer people's questions. So if you have any more questions, send them. And now I'm going to start answering questions. First question, is CPI on any campuses? Also, is it possible to buy songs from that Iranian spiritual leader? I do not know. There's sanctions on Iran, so it's very hard to have business transactions with any Iranians at all. It's very, very difficult. So I don't know if you're able to buy songs by that Iranian spiritual leader. I really don't know, because you can't do bank transfers. Their credit cards don't work in Iran. So I can imagine buying anything from anyone who is based in Iran is very difficult. So that's that. I mean, now as far as being on any campuses, we have multiple current students in our group. We do. We don't have an organization set up on a campus at this time. When we started out, we were the Students and Youth for a New America clubs, and we were at New School University, and we were at Black something or other, the college in Illinois, Black something, Black Hawk or Black something. I don't remember. But right now we're not incorporated on any campuses. But we have a lot of people that are in college, that teach in colleges that are around us. And we actually had some interesting ideas about outreach. Forgot to mention that at our last meeting, but I'll get to that. There is a unique angle for outreach to college students that I thought of recently. And I think I've run it by a few people and they think it's pretty smart. And we may start doing that kind of outreach this spring, when school is back in session. But anyway, there we go. So, all right. Will Tulsi be able to get the nomination, or will she go the way of Matt Gaetz? I hope she doesn't back down. Well, Matt Gaetz, right? I mean, if you look at the whole thing, they were going to try to make him out to be a sexual predator. And if you look at the details of the case, I mean, it's one of those things where it's like they don't want you to read the details. Like Scott Ritter, they don't look at the details of what they got Scott Ritter for. There's no victim. He didn't do anything. He literally didn't do anything. He did not do anything illegal, and they entrapped him. And he had a conversation on the internet, and they got him for that. It's completely ridiculous. And with Matt Gaetz, the allegation, I'm not going to get into a huge amount of detail. And it's actually really, really complicated if you look into it. And there was like somebody who was making fake IDs, and there was like somebody in Iran, and people were being brought. It's really complicated. But long story short, there was an underage girl who had a fake ID that said she was of age. And the allegation is that that Matt Gaetz bought her a plane ticket. That's it. And I don't even know if that part is even true. The whole thing is bullshit. It's like, yeah, it'd be one thing. It sounds really awful. Trafficking underage girls sounds awful, right? Makes you think he's Jeffrey Epstein. Makes you think he's, running a harem and smuggling people in from the third world to be sex slaves or something. The essence of what they were trying to accuse him of is that there was someone who had a false ID, was claiming to be 18 years old and was not. And he allegedly bought her a plane ticket. And that's it. Right. And this just goes to show you how I'm not going to go into too much detail, but, they can take things that are very mild and blow them up into things they are not. They did that with Scott Ritter, and they actually put him in prison for it. And with Matt Gaetz, I don't even know if he even did buy a plane ticket for this person, but they had this person in question apparently had a false ID, and that false ID was made for them by somebody who I believe it turns out was a government informant. The whole thing is really weird and complicated. And the idea that Matt Gaetz was running a harem or something like that, that's not what happened, right? So, and they dropped it. They looked into it and they dropped it, but they were going to raise that. They were ready to give Matt Gaetz the full-on Brett Kavanaugh treatment. Brett Kavanaugh, I don't necessarily agree with him politically. He just seemed like a neocon guy, but what they did to Brett Kavanaugh was absolutely disgusting. Okay. And I look back on that whole thing. I was kind of on the fence at the time because whatever, I wasn't where I'm at now politically, but I look back on that whole thing. That whole thing was really, they brought forward a woman who couldn't remember when, where, but she just, and it was like, she said that they were at a party and he attempted something with her. And she couldn't remember where, she couldn't remember. The whole thing. And it was like, why are we entertaining this? Right. It'd be one thing if she was accusing him of an actual crime. It'd be one thing if the crime had actually taken place, but it was, I have this vague memory of one time going to a party and someone trying to do something and they didn't do it. And I think it was this guy. That was ridiculous. That was absolutely disgusting and ridiculous. And the fact that the whole country was, we all had to sit through that. And he was going to get confirmed anyway. It was just, my goodness, if indeed he did try to do something that he shouldn't have done, that's wrong, obviously. But on that thin of, with that thin of a story, they shouldn't have run with it, right? That was, I don't know. And he got confirmed anyway. It's not like it was close. It wasn't like, oh, maybe we won't confirm him. Oh, let's look into every detail. No, it was just, it was just dumb. It was just absolutely dumb. And it was gross. The whole thing was just uncomfortable, and it was like, okay, all right. There's a possibility that maybe this woman is telling the truth and that maybe they were drunk at a party and he did something, he tried to do something he shouldn't have done. Okay, but since we don't know the date, since we don't know the location, this is all really vague and it's, I don't know. Anyway, I don't know. People, and they were ready to do that to Matt Gaetz, right? They were ready to do that whole thing to Matt Gaetz and, Matt, but I'm really glad that he's going to be the special counsel. I'm really, really glad that Matt is going to be the special counsel. I'm really glad to hear that he's still going to be the special counsel and he's not been completely out. And my understanding is that Trump is probably going to do a recess appointment of Tulsi Gabbard, but we'll see. We shall see. We need to, if possible, if there's hearings going on where they're grilling Tulsi, that is going to be our chance to defend Tulsi Gabbard. We got to be in the streets. We love Tulsi. We got to find ways to build up support for Tulsi, if that is the case. If Tulsi is dragged before a committee for all kinds of hearings, and the same for RFK. The same for RFK. If they drag RFK before committees and start interrogating him about all his girlfriends and all of that, we got to do the same thing, right? Again, I said that Trump getting in is going to give us an opportunity to fight. If Kamala was in, we wouldn't stand a chance. But this gives us an opportunity. There's a lot of bad folks who've been appointed into the Trump administration. There's also a lot of good folks. And I will say I am very disappointed in the people who are just going, oh, see, Trump was just as bad. It's like, hold up. There's an opportunity to fight here. And some people don't want to fight. They just want to be right on the internet. And that is one thing. I said this to Gavin when we had our open stream. I have never, maybe I'm just too old. Maybe this actually happens, but I doubt it. I have never been to a funeral in my life, a memorial service, a wake, where, Bob is laying in the casket. And the person giving the eulogy says, everyone here, Bob is no longer with us. But we will never forget that day when Bob was right on the internet. God bless him. He was right on the internet. He didn't do anything about it. He didn't change the world, but he said stuff that was right on the internet. And he will go down. He's immortal because he was right on the internet. That's the man. That's the man we knew and loved, Bob. He was right online. His tweets were correct. I don't know anyone whose funeral has ever said that. Do you? People generally get remembered at their funerals for building relationships, getting things done, changing the world, changing people's lives. But there are a lot of people in our society that are convinced that that's too dangerous. Oh, that's too messy. Having to get along with people, having to work with people you might not agree with. Oh, that's too dangerous. But the way that I am going to make my mark on humanity is I am going to be the world's greatest version of this meme. I am going to be old man yells at cloud. This is what I will go down in history as. With my Twitter page, with my Facebook statuses, with my Instagram, I will be remembered as the greatest old man to ever yell at a cloud ever. That's what a lot of people are convinced they're going to go down in history as. I am the greatest old man to ever yell at clouds. And I really feel sorry for you if that's what you aspire to be. And honestly, if you aspire to be that, you lack self-esteem. You're not holding yourself to higher standards. Look, I'll just say this because there's somebody I know, right? Young woman, amazing, brilliant. She has studied Marxism like you wouldn't believe. She knows the history of the Communist Party amazingly well, and she's very confident. And she got up in front of a group of people, and she's in one of these little tiny irrelevant communist groups, and I think she's in her mid-20s. And I said to her the other day, I just sent her a text. I just felt like I had to, right? I said, look, what are your plans? Where do you see yourself in 5 to 10 years? What do you see yourself as? And she did reply to me, to her credit. And she said, I want to move up in my organization. And I was just like, all right, I just have to leave it at that. I can't say anything more, but it's like, that's really, so you're going to get on some Zoom calls and talk about Stalin. That's what you can achieve. This woman, very good looking, very confident, very well read about Marxism. She could have her own YouTube channel. She could be a college professor. She could do amazing work. But, she thinks all she's capable of is she's going to be in this stupid internet club, and people don't live up to their potential, right? They don't aim high. They think that all they can do is be an old man yelling at cloud on Twitter. They think all they can do is, get on some Zoom calls and talk about Stalin and how amazing Stalin was. It's like, I get frustrated because I see a lot of people that are full of potential, but they get in their own way. I think that many people watching this right now have the ability to make a great contribution for anti-imperialism. Look, look at the video we just did, right? That was, 11, 12 people in our organization. And because of CPI, they had the opportunity to deliver this amazing anti-imperialist message that's already been viewed by 67,000 people and will be viewed by even more than that. You all made a contribution. We helped you to make that contribution. Now, if you had never joined CPI and you just sat on the internet, would you have been able to, if this was all you aspired to be? No, that's why CPI exists. It's to help you to find your potential. That's the point. Delete stream services. Why would I do that? Why would I use StreamYard? Right? Why would I delete StreamYard? That doesn't make any sense. You lost me there, Daniel. I'm sorry. Every so often I see something in the chat. I'm like, what the fuck are you talking about? I'm not deleting StreamYard. There are so many people that I know that are on the right side, which in this country, there's a lot of people who don't understand and are very confused. A lot of people who are on the right side and have a lot of skill, but it doesn't occur to them they can do something with it. Well, I'm here to tell you, you don't have to be old man yells at cloud. You can be one of the people in the video, right? You can be one of these people, and we can help you become that. Look at that. We can make you into that. Oh, he meant Netflix. Okay, gotcha. But we can help you make a great contribution. That's why we exist, right? And that's why we don't practice democratic centralism. That's why, so many of these groups are somebody's ego trip. This group is not that, right? We've done more for Uhuru than any of the communist groups have. And it's so funny, right? I've been in so many different groups. I got to start answering questions. All right. I am answering. I'm doing this, right? But I've been in so many different groups where people are told, no, you can't do this. You can't do that. You can't speak. You can't write. You can't organize this event. No, you can't. And we don't do that in CPI. We try our hardest to never stop our members from making a contribution. And the main reason that I was in different communist groups constantly being told, oh, you can't do this, you can't do this, you can't do this, is because it was certain people's ego trip, right? Certain people wanted to be the center of attention, and anything that would distract from them being the center of attention was a problem. I don't do that, right? I have made a point of not doing that, right? And if you look at what we have done, we are constantly doing everything we can for Uhuru. We are constantly empowering different members to write articles and give talks. We're constantly practically begging other people to do stuff. But I got to love this. And this is always, just got to throw this out there. When people get mad at me, they always accuse me of being a narcissist. I love this. You're a narcissist, Caleb. You're a narcissist. And you know what they mean? They mean, I don't have the confidence to stream on YouTube for 2 hours every night, and you do, and that makes me mad. I want to have the confidence that you have. Well, dude, I would love for you to have the confidence to do that. I'm not trying to take it away. I'm not putting you down. But just because you can't do what I do and you wish you could doesn't make me a bad person, buddy. Right? Or this is another one, right? Do you know who the first people to call people narcissists are? Other narcissists, right? Because narcissists think anyone else existing is somehow an affront to their existence, right? I mean, oh my God, I should be the center of attention at all times. And if you get any attention for yourself, you're cutting into my spotlight, right? So whenever people throw the narcissism allegation at me, it's always one of two things. It's I am jealous of the fact that you can do so much and you have confidence, and I want to somehow make you bad for doing all the stuff that you do. Or two, it's I'm a narcissist myself, and you existing takes away from me being the center of attention. I've had some people say you don't get into politics, you don't get into this kind of politics if you're not a little bit of a narcissist. And there's probably some truth in that. And there is a such thing as healthy narcissism. Why do people love Donald Trump? Because he's a narcissist, because he projects confidence, because he's proud of what he does and people want to be confident. So we need to kind of rethink that. I've noticed that narcissism is one of those YouTube rabbit holes. Stay the hell away from it. There is a YouTube rabbit hole of all these narcissist videos. And I have a feeling that many of the people who watch them are narcissists themselves, but they are unsuccessful narcissists. There are videos, hundreds of videos all about narcissism and all these narcissists out there that are making you miserable. And I have a feeling a lot of the people who watch those videos are narcissists themselves, and they are trying to find an excuse. They're what they call deflated narcissists or defeated narcissists, and they want a reason that they can't fulfill their narcissistic desires, and it's because everyone else is a narcissist, right? So, I'm just, the way we talk about the narcissism thing, look, if you don't have the confidence to do what you wish you could do, my job is to help you find it. That's what I'm trying to do, right? If you feel like you can't speak, if you can't, you can't get up in front of an audience or whatever, and you want to do that, I would like to help you find that confidence. If you feel like you can't write, if you feel like you're not knowledgeable enough and you want to be more knowledgeable, you want to write, I would like to help you to do that. I generally try to help people find their own strengths and all of that. If I was silencing other people, telling other people they couldn't do stuff or something, it would be totally fine to accuse me of narcissism, because that's what narcissists do. And I've dealt with that quite a bit in my life. But I don't do that, and I don't do that. And yeah, so there we go. All right. Thank you, Gala. We got to have Tulsi's back. We got to be doing everything we can to support her, especially if it goes to Senate confirmation hearings. If it's a recess appointment and she just gets in, that'd be very cool. We'll see. amazing how you make perfect sense. Iran deserves an apology from Trump. Well, they do. They do deserve an apology from Trump. And it would be really, 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 really smart on Donald Trump's part to give it to them. It would be brilliant on his part. It would be unexpected. No one would expect Trump to do that. And it would be like, what? Everyone would go, did he just? And it would be an amazing victory for world peace. If Trump could come forward and say, I was manipulated, I was given bad information, and I shouldn't have killed Qasem Soleimani. If he would do that, that would be great. That would be amazing. That would be such a beautiful step forward. I think the chances of it happening are quite a long shot, but I think the best thing that needs to happen is people like us who are not Trump's enemy, right? Why would Trump listen to people? People think, oh, we don't want Trump to do stuff. We're going to join the Trump derangement syndrome movement and we're going to call him a fascist and a Nazi. Why would he listen to you then? Right? I don't get this, right? The Answer Coalition, right? The PSL, they're having a big protest against the inauguration. I mean, that's a surefire way to guarantee that Donald Trump doesn't listen to them, right? If your response to Donald Trump getting elected is to call him a Nazi and a fascist and a racist and go out and burn a bunch of cars when he takes the oath of office, why the hell would he listen to you? Would you listen to somebody like that? Hey, if you just got a job, right, and somebody is outside of your job yelling at the boss, don't let him have that job, he's a bad person. Are you going to think, oh, I better do what that guy yelling out there said? No, you're going to think that person out there is trying to get me fired from my job. I don't like them. Why would Donald Trump listen to these people, right? If you're pro-Palestine, why in the world would your response to Donald Trump getting elected be to call him a Nazi and burn the American flag? And I mean, he's not going to listen to you. And I don't think this is like deep stuff for people to understand. I think it's pretty basic that Trump promised a lot of good things, and it's our job to create a political atmosphere where he can deliver on those good things. And if we develop Trump derangement syndrome, no one is going to listen to us, and we will not deliver on those. We will not have the ability to make him deliver on those things. But if we can be with the people in the Trump camp who want him to do those good things he promised to do, and we can build public support and a movement of people who want peace, etc. If that's the case, we have much more of a chance of him listening to us. So I'm telling you, if you would like to see things get better under Trump, the answer is not to develop Trump derangement syndrome. The answer is to go into the Trump movement and boost the good things about it. The anti-deep state, the anti-war, that's where we need to be, right? And I am blown away. I'll just say this, that the very same people who were going around saying MAGA communism, which is the most cringe, I tried my best, I try to make my best out of any situation. But when they said MAGA communism, I'm like, really? Like, anyone who's MAGA hates communism. Anyone who's a communist hates MAGA. I get what you're saying, and I was doing that before they were, that we need to reach out to Trump people. We need to embrace the good things about the Trump movement, but we got to be a little bit smarter about it. I wrote a book, Marxism, MAGA, and the Coming Revolution, to try and kind of explain the class forces and divisions of the ruling class. I wrote this book. It's an audio book and all of that. And this is far more coherent than anything the so-called MAGA communists ever published. And this is actually the most coherent. This is the closest thing to a MAGA communist manifesto that was ever published. But I was just like, don't call it MAGA communism. That's dumb. But the very same people that have been doing MAGA communism now have Trump derangement syndrome. I kid you not. They are now attacking us for not having Trump derangement syndrome and not burning Trump in effigy at Palestine rallies like they are suddenly doing. And you look at that and you're just like, damn, like, how are people exactly wrong? Right? How are people able to be this exactly wrong? Right? When it was not strategic to call it MAGA communism, but there was an understanding that we needed to start pivoting because the MAGA people were the anti-war people. They announced MAGA communism and they couldn't explain it. And they did cringe interviews where they couldn't explain what it meant. And it was bad. And then now that Trump is actually in office and we have the actual ability to nudge Trump in an anti-imperialist direction, now they're all just like, oh my God, Trump is a Nazi Zionist. Some of them were even saying they wanted Kamala Harris to win. I saw this. It's like, how are these people exactly wrong? And this is why we need to not call ourselves communists. Because communists in America suck. They do, right? And they don't believe in any of the stuff that we believe in. I wrote the whole book. I wrote the innovationists. We're innovationists, right? We're not communists, right? First of all, we're not dialectical materialists. We believe in, at least I believe in God, and I'm motivated by spirituality. I'm not motivated by materialism. But on top of that, right, the MAGA communism crowd, I mean, it's like basically whatever we do, they find a way to do it in the most cringe way possible in order to fuck up whatever we're doing, right? When CPI first started, a lot of people that were in the Communist Party were coming to CPI events. Great. That was good. We had people that were dual members of the Communist Party and CPI. We actually were influencing people in the Communist Party, which was very difficult because the Communist Party is very much a family business and controlled by certain people. But we were actually starting to get through to some of the younger members of the Communist Party. And then out of the blue, these people on the internet are like, we're going to take over the Communist Party, which you're not going to do. That's not possible, right? Anyone who's done any real organizing, not just sat on the internet, would know that. But they just, all these memes, all these videos, we're going to take over the Communist Party and we are with Caleb and we're with CPI. And they were not with Caleb and they were not with CPI. They were plotting against me the whole time. And I'm trying to be nice to those people, but I'm also telling them, this ain't going to work. You're not going to be able to do this. But of course, what happens? The Communist Party flips out. Oh my God, they're trying to take us over, which was not possible. So the Communist Party freaks out and has a meltdown and publishes big, long hit pieces against me. I'm not the one trying to take them over. And all of this, right? And then after that, it's MAGA communism. Why are you calling it MAGA communism? No MAGA person is ever going to join MAGA communism. And no communist is ever going to join MAGA communism. It is the most exclusive, niche, stupid brand. And they roll out people to be like the spokespeople for MAGA communism, and they are dumb as a fucking box of rocks. It's like, MAGA communism means like we're against the government and the Bolsheviks killed hundreds of millions of Christians because Trotsky worked for the British Jewish bankers, and they say stupid shit, right? And they don't know what Trotsky is. They don't know anything, and they just roll it out there, right? And I'm sitting here and I'm just like, okay, well, I mean, these people have a huge social media reach, which is very interesting. Everything they do gets blasted. Everything we do gets suppressed. So, okay, put out this book. It doesn't say MAGA communism anywhere in this book, right? And I'm not really embracing MAGA communism, but I'm kind of leaning into it a little bit, hoping maybe some of these people will read it. And this book is like about to be published in Chinese and all kinds of stuff, Okay. And now Trump has actually won on an anti-war platform. And now the very same people that did MAGA, now they're all just like, no, now we all have to be, woke pro-Palestine people and all of that. I want nothing to do with these people. That is, I am at the point, there are no anti-imperialist communists in America. There are none. There is not a single communist group in America that is anti-imperialist. I don't count the Uhuru movement as a communist group because they're a unique political formation for Black people only, and they're African internationalists, and so they're not one of the ML tendencies. There is not a single communist group in America that is anti-imperialist. Even though anti-imperialism is an essential part of Marxist-Leninist ideology, there is not a single communist party in America that is anti-imperialist. Not one. There's the Party of Communist USA that is Zionist, that supports Israel. Most of the communist groups support Ukraine against Russia. Most of the communist groups participate in liberal protests against China, demonizing China. Most of the communist groups denounce all the anti-imperialist states and support the color revolutions against them. And there are no anti-imperialist communists left in America. So if anti-imperialism is a central part of my belief, and there are no anti-imperialist communists in America, why should I call myself a communist? And atheism is a really big deal. Bob Avakian, away with all gods, right? God is the original fascist. Atheism. I'm not an atheist. I believe in God. And around the world, most anti-imperialists believe in God. The Iranians believe in God. The Nicaraguans and the Venezuelans believe in God. And even most of the communists in the world, the Russian Communist Party leader, Gennady Zhuganov, he believes in God. He's a Russian Orthodox Christian. I mean, but these communists are insisting on atheism. If you believe in God, you're a Nazi fascist, you're racist. Well, I believe in God. So we're not communists, right? And we're not trying to trick people. And let me just get this straight, all right? There's a lot of people who are like, well, Caleb, that's stupid. You're still a communist and you're just saying you're not. No, I'm not. Communism in America means something at this point. If you go to average people and you say to them, what's a communist? They say, oh, communists are these kids with pink hair who are obsessed with the transgender issue and think all Republicans are Nazis. That's what an American communist is. I am not that, and neither are you if you're watching this. So you're not a communist, right? And you can say, well, I'm what communism actually is. Well, that sounds like No True Scotsman. Have you ever heard No True Scotsman before? All right, there's the joke about the Scotsman who's very proud of Scotland, and he's sitting there watching the television. And he's watching the television, and he hears about an Englishman who committed a horrendous crime of rape and a murder. And he says, no Scotsman would ever commit such a horrendous crime and a murder as this. No Scotsman would ever do it. And then 2 minutes later, the news talks about an even more horrendous crime that was committed by a Scotsman. And he says, well, no true Scotsman would ever commit such a horrendous crime. And that's, they call it No True Scotsman, where you move the goalpost, right? Where the definition of something changes conveniently, right? Well, that Scotsman who committed the crime must not be a true Scotsman. That's what sitting here going, well, I'm the real communist. That's what it sounds like to most people. That's kind of what it is, right? Because around the world, the communist governments are not Marxist-Leninist anymore. Marxism-Leninism doesn't say have a market sector. Marxism-Leninism definitely doesn't believe in God. Marxism-Leninism, the Soviet way of doing things, which had great achievements, that ain't the way people do things anymore. And if you look at what's happening in the world, anti-imperialism exists. For me, being a communist meant anti-imperialism, opposing the global system of monopolistic capitalism that's enforced with ugly wars, opposing imperialism, number one, and advocating a rationally organized economy to unleash growth and productive forces. Rational control and planning of the means of production in the economy, and anti-imperialism. I still believe that. I have not backed away from either of those things. I still stand with everyone who is anti-imperialist. Everyone, right? Any country, if you're up against the imperialists, I'm on your side, period. And I still think the banks, factories, and industries should be organized to serve public good and not the profits of a wealthy few. And the problems of technology and overproduction and the tendency of the falling rate of profit, all of that necessitates a rationally organized economy. So my views have not changed. The thing is, globally, the forces that are aligned with that, which started out as communists, none of that would have happened without the Soviet Union, without China. Now those forces are no longer Marxist-Leninist, number one. And number two, the people in America who go around calling themselves Marxist-Leninists and calling themselves communists don't believe that. They're not anti-imperialist. They don't want a rationally organized economy. They want worker cooperatives. They want to overthrow the American government and replace it with some anti-racist feminist government or something. They want to give all the land to the Native Americans and deport all the white people. I don't know what they want. They want, they have this evil aesthetic. They want to tear everything down. They want to punish people. They want to show everyone how mad they are, but they don't want a rationally planned economy. And they are allies of imperialism. Meanwhile, the people around the world that have rationally planned economies, like the Iranians, like the Nicaraguans, like the Venezuelans, they are not Marxist-Leninist anymore. So, at this point, we're not communists. We have developed a new stage called innovationism of anti-imperialism and celebrating human growth and creativity. And that's where we're at. And it's very exciting because what we believe as CPI, this is what the Russians believe. This is what the Chinese believe. It's what the Nicaraguans with their micro-entrepreneurship program, it's what they believe, right? It's what the Iranians believe with their resistance economy that they've developed. It's what the Zimbabweans believe. It's what the people in West Africa, in Mali and Niger and the countries that just broke out of French domination, it's what they believe. We are the voice of a global movement. But in order to be that voice, we must not be communist anymore because that global movement is not communist anymore. It's not. It started with communism. Communism laid the foundations, and it takes with it two of the most important points of communism, which are anti-imperialism and rationally organizing the economy to have unlimited growth. But communists have abandoned those principles. So there you go. Hey, Caleb, do you do interviews? I do. I would love to see you interview Professor Mohammed Marandi. I would love to have him on. He goes on a lot of anti-imperialist media. He goes on RT. He goes on Press TV. He goes on many different shows to talk about Iran. He's a brilliant speaker, and I would love to have him on this channel. I would love to. So if anyone knows how I could reach that fellow and invite him to come on here to talk about Iran and anti-imperialism, I would happily do that. I would very, very happily have him on. And thank you, Fatima. Thank you. I appreciate that suggestion. I deeply, deeply appreciate the suggestion. But on that note, folks, I am going to say good night, and I'll be back probably tomorrow, if not tomorrow, the next day. We're going to be streaming a lot. And Friday will be our membership drive. So see you all then. Adios. New upsurge in the struggle against U.S. imperialism is now emerging throughout the world. Ever since World War II, U.S. imperialism and its followers have been continuously launching wars of aggression. But the people of various countries have been continuously waging revolutionary wars to defeat their aggression. While the danger of a new world war still exists, and the people of all countries must get prepared, revolution is the main trend in the world today.